I needed the money. That's what I kept telling myself when I signed up for the night shift. A quiet overnight security job in an old, decommissioned office building on the edge of town. The guy who handed me the keys said it used to be some kind of administrative hub for a company that went under 10 years ago. Since then, it's that empty, dead quiet, he said. No squatters, no trespassers, just a few flickering lights and a door that stuck sometimes. Easy money. The first night, I pulled up just after sundown. The building sat hunched in the middle of a cracked parking lot, surrounded by weeds that had long since claimed the pavement. Rows of dark windows stared back at me like hollow eyes. As I stepped out of my car, the air hit me with that unmistakable scent dust. Mildew and something faintly metallic, like old blood or rusted pipes. I walked through the front doors, which opened with a reluctant groan, and made my way to the small security office near the front lobby. The walls were faded beige, the floors scuffed linoleum. The only light came from a single overhead bulb that buzzed faintly, pulsing like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive or die completely. My boots echoed on the tiles with every step. I took too loud, too alone. Inside the office, there was a desk, a row of small monitors, and a half-broken coffee machine that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the building was last occupied. I clocked in on the dusty old terminal and checked a security feed. Most of the cameras were working, but the footage was grainy like watching a horror movie on a VHS that had been taped over too many times. By midnight, I'd made my first. Round 3 floors, 22 rooms, 6 stairwells, and a basement that smelled like something had died in long ago. I kept the flashlight close, even though most of the hallways were still lit by dim fluorescents. The deeper into the building I went, the more I noticed it. The air got colder. The lights flickered more often. My footsteps didn't sound quite right, like they had an echo. Not from the walls, but from something walking just half a step behind me. I told myself I was being paranoid. Old buildings creak, pipes groan, lights flicker. That's just how it is. Still, I found myself turning around constantly, expecting to see something just out of reach. Nothing was ever there, until the end of my shift. At 6 on the dot, I returned to the lobby, ready to clock out and head home. But when I reached for the door, it didn't budge. I frowned and pulled harder. Nothing. I jiggled the handle, shoved it with my shoulder, even kicked it once. The heavy glass doors just sat there, unmoved like they were sealed shut from the outside. I stepped back, confused, and pulled out my phone. No signal. Not even a single bar. Then the sound started. It was faint at first, like the hush of wind slipping through a cracked window. But the building was sealed tight, and there was no breeze. The sound built slowly, layer by layer, like whispers, seeping through the walls. I couldn't understand the words, if they were even words, but they were there. Low, rhythmic, circling me. I backed away from the door, scanning the lobby. Hello? I called out, instantly regretting how shaky my voice sounded. No answer, just the whispers, growing louder, thicker, like they were crawling through the air, wrapping around me. Then, as the first sliver of sunlight broke over the horizon and spilled through the windows, the door unlocked with an audible click. Just like that, no explanation, no resistance. It swung open easily, like nothing had ever been wrong. I stumbled outside, sucking in the cold morning air like I just surfaced from drowning. My hands were shaking. I told myself it was just a glitch, some kind of electrical fault. Maybe the building's security system was automated to lock at night. Maybe I didn't read the manual closely enough. That had to be it, right? Still, I didn't sleep when I got home. Couldn't. My ears were still ringing with phantom voices, my skin prickling like it hadn't left the building with me. I stared at the ceiling, telling myself it was just one weird night. Just nerves. But it wasn't a one-time thing. The next night, it happened again and again. Every shift ended the same way. The door sealed shut until the sun rose. And each time, the whispers got louder. They weren't background noise anymore. They were deliberate, intentional, calling to me from somewhere deeper in the building, somewhere the cameras didn't reach, somewhere I hadn't yet gone. By the fourth night, I started to wonder if I ever really left the building at all. I'd walk outside and feel the sunlight, sure, but part of me still felt trapped, like something had followed me home, or worse, like I had left something behind and now it was trying to crawl back in. And the worst part, I kept going back. I don't know if it was the money or the curiosity or something else entirely. But every night, just before the sunset, I found myself behind the wheel, heading back toward that empty building. And every night, the darkness inside welcomed me like an old friend. By the fourth night, I was already on edge before I even pulled into the parking lot. I sat in my car for a few minutes, engine idling, staring up at the building. It didn't look abandoned anymore. Something about it had changed. It felt taller somehow, darker, like the shadows clung to it even under the pale streetlights. I stepped out slowly, clutching my thermos like it might protect me. The moment I crossed the threshold, the air changed. The smell hit me again, stronger this time. Not just mold and metal, but something sour. Decay, like wet cloth that had been left to rot. The door groaned shut behind me and clicked into place. I didn't even try to open it again. I already knew it wouldn't move until the sun came back. The security office had become my base camp, one small, familiar bubble in a place that felt increasingly alive. I flipped on the monitors as usual, watching their grainy black and white feeds blink into life one by one. Nothing unusual at first. Just empty corridors and offices, as expected. But then, one of the upper floor cameras flickered just for a second. A black blur. I leaned in, squinting at the screen. The camera stabilized and the hallway was empty. I rewound the feed manually, watching frame by frame. There it was quick, almost like a glitch, but something had passed in front of the lens. A shadow, human-shaped, standing completely still, just watching. I stared at the monitor for a long time. Then I reached for my flashlight, already knowing I was about to do something stupid. I started on the first floor, working my way up the stairwell with slow, heavy steps. The higher I climbed, the colder it got. It was like the heat had been sucked out of the building. My breath fogged in front of me, and I had to tuck my hands under my arms to keep them from going numb. The second floor was silent. The third creaked with every step. By the time I reached the fourth floor, the lights above me were flickering nonstop, casting long shadows that seemed to shift even when I wasn't moving. I kept my flashlight trained straight ahead, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn around. But I didn't. I found the hallway from the monitor. Same scuffed linoleum floor, same long stretch of doors on either side. But now, one of those doors, the third on the right, was cracked open. I know for a fact it was closed the night before. I hadn't touched any of them. I approached slowly, sweeping my flashlight across the walls. The silence was unbearable. No wind, no hum of electronics, just my footsteps and the quiet thud-thud of my heart pounding in my ears. I nudged the door open with my foot. It let out a soft, pained creak. Inside was nothing but an empty office. Desk, chair, filing cabinet, all covered in dust. My beam caught something on the floor, a sheet of paper, alone, perfectly centered. I stepped in and bent down to pick it up. The handwriting was jagged, almost carved into the page. The night belongs to us. You will too. My breath caught in my throat. I spun around instinctively, but the door was already slamming shut behind me. The sound echoed through the room like a gunshot. I rushed forward, yanking on the handle, but it was locked, sealed tight, just like the front doors always were. And then the laughter began. Not loud, not manic, but soft, taunting, like children giggling from just out of sight. I pressed my back to the wall, flashlight shaking in my grip, sweeping the beam across the room in wild arcs. There was no one there, but I wasn't alone. The air dropped 10 degrees in seconds. I could see my breath in the beam of my light, little clouds puffing in and out with each terrified exhale. I turned in circles, looking for a vent, a window, anything that might get me out of this room. Then, clear as a whisper in my ear, I heard it. You're one of us now. You can't leave, dot, dot, dot. I bolted toward the wall opposite the door, where a rusted air vent caught my eye. It was small too, small for but loose. I jabbed, my flashlight under the edge, prying at the screws until the grate came clattering off. The laughter stopped. Silence rushed in like a vacuum. I didn't wait. I climbed in, scraping my arms and shoulders on the sharp metal edges, belly crawling through the duct. It was so tight I could barely move my knees. The air was thick with dust, and I had to fight the urge to gag. Behind me, I heard it again, whispers. Closer this time. Following. We see you. We know you. You're ours. I crawled faster, heart pounding, forehead slick with sweat. The shaft twisted left, then right, then split forked like it wanted me to choose. I picked the wider tunnel and prayed. Eventually, I spotted another grate, this one slightly open. With a desperate kick, I burst through and tumbled into an unfamiliar hallway. The air was still cold, the lights dim. But the whispers had stopped. I lay there for a moment, breathing hard, trying to collect myself. The hallway was different, older, the paint peeling. Lockers lined the walls, rusty and dented. I didn't recognize this floor, and I had memorized every blueprint they gave me. This level wasn't on the map. Then my phone buzzed. I nearly screamed. I pulled it out and saw the message on the screen. No number, no name, just the words. You can run, but the night will keep you. I looked up, and there at the far end of the hallway were the shadows again. Human-shaped, standing still. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. I didn't move at first. I just stood there, staring down that impossibly long hallway at the motionless shadows waiting for me. I couldn't make out their faces if they even had any. Just tall silhouettes, darker than the surrounding dark, with eyes like faint embers burning quietly in the void. And they were watching me. The emergency light above flickered once, and when it came back on, they were closer. I staggered backward, breath caught in my throat. My legs screamed from crawling through the vents, but I forced them to move. I turned and bolted down the opposite direction of the hallway, sprinting as fast as I could. My boots slapped against the damp floor, echoing down corridors that shouldn't exist. This wasn't the building I had memorized, and none of this made sense. I'd passed by old bulletin boards with torn, yellowed paper, doors that had numbers written, in chalk instead of plaques. One door read, Room 7N, and another had, Return, scrawled across it in red marker. None of this had been in the blueprints. No floor with lockers, no sublevel with classrooms or lecture-style rooms. This place was transforming around me, rewriting itself like it had been waiting for me to go deeper, and something was waiting down here, watching, pulling me in. The shadows behind me weren't running, but they didn't need to. Wherever I went, they were never far behind. Eventually, I found a stairwell. I flung the door open and rushed down the stairs, ignoring the sharp pain in my knees with every step. I must have gone down 3, maybe 4 flights before I reached a door that looked newer than the rest steel reinforced, with a keycard reader that blinked red. No way I was getting through. Behind me, the shadows were descending the stairs in silence. I couldn't hear them, but I felt them. The pressure in the air shifted, thickening like a storm was about to hit. I had to hide. I doubled back up 1 flight and ducked into a narrow maintenance hallway. The walls were tight here like the corridors had been designed for people half my size. I crouched low, turned off my flashlight, and crept as quietly as I could. Somewhere far above, a door creaked open. I held my breath. Then the whispers returned. Not just from one direction, from everywhere. All around me, through the vents, the pipes, the goddamn concrete. You shouldn't have come back. You were chosen. Now you stay. And they were angry now. Not just mocking, but furious. I could hear them pacing above me, dragging something across the floor. Something heavy. I moved faster, crouching, through the hallway until I reached another room. The plaque on the door was missing, just 4 empty screw holes in the metal frame. I opened it and stepped into pitch black. I flicked the flashlight back on and froze. It was a conference room, sort of. Dozens of chairs were arranged in a circle. All of them were occupied by mannequins, each one dressed in what looked like security uniforms. Not just any uniforms, my uniform. Same logo, same badge number. And on each of their plastic faces were drawn on smiles with hollow eyes scratched into the surface. Some had their heads tilted at unnatural angles. One had no arms. Another sat with its face turned to the wall. I started backing out. Then one of their heads turned, just slightly. I slammed the door shut and ran. By now, I had no clue where I was. The architecture didn't follow logic anymore. I'd turn down a hallway and end up back where I started. The rooms I passed once would show up again in places they didn't belong. The whole place was shifting like a living organism, like I was inside the belly of something ancient and angry. Then I saw the security office. But it wasn't on the first floor. Somehow, impossibly, it was here. A perfect replica, just sitting in the middle of this warped off the map floor. I burst inside and slammed the door shut behind me, bracing it with a chair. The monitors flickered on by themselves. Each screen showed a different hallway, every one of them darker than they should have been. Grainy, low-res footage revealed the shadow figures moving. All at once, they weren't just wandering now. They were searching. For me, and then I saw something that made my blood run cold. One of the monitors showed my apartment. Same hallway. Same wallpaper. Same flickering lamp in the corner I hadn't fixed yet. A shadow moved across the frame. I stepped back, almost knocking the chair over. Another monitor switched on. It showed my bedroom. Empty, quiet, then movement. Something crawled out. From under the bed? Not walked, crawled. The monitor glitched. Static filled the screen. I turned off the power strip and backed away. My phone buzzed in my pocket again. No number, no name, just words. The building is only the beginning. You brought it with you? We're already inside. I dropped the phone. That was when the mirror across the room, one that I swear hadn't been there earlier, began to fog. A handprint appeared on the glass, then another, dozens of them. The surface of the mirror bulged, like something was pressing against it from the other side, trying to come through. And I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I didn't know where I was going anymore. Every hallway stretched too long. Every door opened into a place that shouldn't exist. The architecture had melted into madness, like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I could hear the whispering building behind me into full chants now. Crescendo of voices layered over each other in tongues I didn't recognize. Somewhere, far ahead, I saw a sliver of light. Daylight. Maybe. I ran toward it. I sprinted toward the light like a drowning man clawing for air. My legs ached, lungs burning, but I didn't stop. The glow at the end of the hallway shimmered, like sunlight through fog, shifting with every step I took. Just as I got within reach, it vanished. Gone. Like someone had flipped the switch. I stumbled forward, hands outstretched, but found nothing but another cold, dead wall. The building was playing with me now, mocking me. I collapsed against the wall, my breath ragged. My flashlight was down to a dim beam, the batteries dying with every flicker. Sweat chilled on my skin, and the whispers were closer, now so close. They sounded like they were right behind my ears. We almost had you. You brought light where there should be none. You don't belong above anymore. That last whisper sounded different, familiar. I couldn't place it, but something about the tone crawled under my skin. Like I heard it before in a dream I'd long forgotten, or maybe in a nightmare I never escaped. Suddenly a metallic click echoed down the corridor. I froze, then slowly turned toward the sound. At the end of the hallway, a door had appeared. It wasn't there a moment ago, and this one looked new, not rusted or rotting like the others. Clean steel industrial, with a single red light blinking just above the frame. I didn't want to go to it, but I didn't have a choice. The whispering was behind me again, now urgent, hungry. The walls themselves seemed to tremble, breathing in shallow, rhythmic pulses. My feet carried me toward the door, even as my brain screamed at me to run the other way. I reached it, and With hesitation, pushed it open. What I saw on the other side made me stumble back in disbelief. It was my apartment. Down to the last detail. The couch I always meant to replace. The cracked lamp near the bathroom. The coffee table stained. From that one time, I spilled red wine and never really cleaned it right. But it wasn't right. Everything was too still, too perfect. The kind of perfect that only exists in wax museums or mannequin storefronts. My keys were sitting in the exact center of the counter. My jacket hung neatly on a hook I never used. And on the floor, just in front of the door, was another note. The same handwriting. You're home now. You never left. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut behind me. I yanked at the handle and locked. Of course it was locked. I had pounded against it, shouted, kicked. Nothing. I backed away, scanning the room. Asterisk, the lights flicked on by themselves. The TV turned on next, crackling with static before switching to grainy footage of me sitting at the security desk, staring into the monitors. Only I wasn't moving. I wasn't blinking. I was just there, watching. And then I moved. Not in. Sync with me. The version of me on the screen slowly turned its head. First to the left, then to the right. And then it stared straight at the camera. Straight at me. Its mouth moved. No sound. I looked around frantically. There's no camera in my apartment. None. But it could still see me. I raced into the kitchen, searching for something, anything to break a window. But there was no glass, no curtains, just blank walls where windows should have been. I opened cabinets in a frenzy. Empty. Every drawer empty. The fridge completely clean. I ran to the bedroom and froze. There was someone lying in my bed. Under the covers, face turned away. I approached slowly, inching forward, heart hammering against my ribs. The figure sat up. I didn't see its face. I didn't need to. It was me. But not me. Its eyes were black holes, leaking something thick and dark. Its mouth pulled into a grin that stretched too wide. Its voice rasped like gravel grinding inside a metal pipe. We said you couldn't leave. I stumbled back and slammed the bedroom door, holding it shut with all my weight. Then silence, a long, choking silence, until the sound of footsteps, dozens of them, all approaching. Slow, deliberate, each one pressing down through the floor like they belonged to something too heavy to be human. I backed away from the door, flashlight flickering in my hand. Then my phone buzzed. I looked down. A new message. The mirror wasn't the door. It was the invitation. They're through now. The lights went out. Total darkness. My flashlight died with a quiet click. And in that black void, I felt them, breathing with me, around me, inside the walls, inside me. The sound of creaking, wood echoed through the room. The door I had sealed slowly opened, and standing in the hallway were all the mannequins. Only they weren't mannequins anymore. They moved, twitched, tilted their heads in unnatural rhythm, and they were all wearing my face. I screamed and ran past them, shoulder slamming my way through their plastic bodies, feeling hands claw at my arms and shoulders. I ran through another hallway, through a door, down a flight of stairs, and I was back in the building, as if the apartment had never existed. Only this time, something was different. The door behind me, the one that had vanished before, it was wide open. And outside, the faintest golden light was starting to rise. Sunlight. Real sunlight. I sprinted for it. The whispers shrieked behind me now. Furious, violent, afraid, as if the morning light burned them. I burst through the door and fell to the ground just as the sun crested the horizon. The cold air hit my lungs like a blessing. The building behind me actually groaned, like something ancient in pain, but I didn't look back. I just lay there, catching my breath, the whispering finally. Finally, silent. I didn't go back. Not that day. Not the one after either. I didn't care about the paycheck anymore. I didn't care about the contract I signed or the calls I ignored from the temp agency. The only thing I cared about was distance putting as much of it between me and that place as possible. But distance doesn't mean escape. I know that now. The first night home, I didn't sleep. I kept all the lights on, checked the locks every hour, piled furniture against the front door. I sat on the couch, eyes fixed on the TV, but not watching anything, ears tuned to every creak and shift in the building. The second night was worse. The power flickered at exactly 1:11 a.m., just like the building. A low draft blew through my apartment, cold and slow like something exhaling in my ear. Then the TV turned on, white static. A voice whispered beneath it, too quiet to understand, but too deliberate to ignore. I yanked the power cord out of the wall. The TV stayed on. I threw a blanket over it, heart racing, and backed into the bedroom. Closed the door, locked it. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. No call ID. I didn't want to look, but I did. The building sleeps now. But we don't. You left the door open. I dropped the phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely breathe. That's when I saw it. A shadow in the corner of my bedroom. Not cast by anything. Just there. And within it, those eyes again, faintly glowing, watching me. I grabbed the lamp beside my bed and swung it toward the corner. The second the light touched it, gone. But the temperature didn't change back. It stayed cold. The shadow never left entirely. It just scattered, like it had found a way in, like it was waiting. The following day, I went to a motel. Just a cheap roadside spot with buzzing neon lights and floral bedspreads. It smelled like bleach and cigarettes, but I didn't care. I needed to be anywhere else. But that night, as I tried to sleep same time, 1:11 a.m., the whispering started. Inside the walls, in the vents, under the bed. We're close now. We never needed the building. You brought us home. I jumped up, threw on my shoes, and ran out of the motel barefoot into the freezing night. My breath clouded in front of me as I stood alone in the parking lot, feeling eyes on me from every dark window. I didn't go back inside. I drove until sunrise. Didn't even know where I was going, just that I couldn't stop moving. Eventually, I pulled over at a gas station and slept in the car. My dreams were thick, heavy, full of distorted images. My own face on someone else's body. That damn mirror fogging up with handprints. The security monitors showing things I hadn't seen yet. When I woke up, my phone had a new message. Sleep doesn't save you. Sunlight delays us, but you're still ours. I smashed the phone on the pavement. Didn't matter. The whispering didn't come from the phone anymore. It was in me now. Everywhere I went, I'd catch movement in mirrors. Just a flicker, but it was always me, only different. Standing still, just watching, wearing that too wide smile. Eyes like static. People on the street would glance over their shoulders after passing me. One old woman actually crossed herself when we locked eyes. A part of me thought I could outrun it, but I was wrong. It wasn't just following me, it had already caught. And then came the final proof. I got a letter. No postmark, no stamp. Just a torn envelope slipped through my apartment mail slot. Inside was a photo. Black and white. Grainy. It showed the security office from the building. Empty. Except for one chair. And in that chair was me. Unmoving, staring at the monitors. Behind me on the screen was a shot of my apartment. I flipped the photo over. Scrawled in red ink. We saved your seat. That night, I stood in the bathroom for hours, watching the mirror, waiting to see what would look back. At 1:11 a.m., it happened. Not a figure. Not a reflection. The glass cracked. Right down the middle. Something moved inside the crack. Slid beneath the surface like oil in water. Eyes open behind the splintered glass. And I knew then this wasn't haunting. This was merging. My world was becoming theirs. The building wasn't just haunted. It was a gateway. And I had walked through. I couldn't run anymore. Not because I was tired, though I was so deeply, brutally tired, but because there was nowhere left to run. Every mile I put between me and that building only twisted the air tighter around me. It wasn't chasing me. It was tethered to me. It was in me. And I think I always knew I'd have to go back. I didn't shower. I didn't eat. I just sat in the driver's seat of my car outside the building all night for 3 days, watching the front doors, waiting for them to move, for them to open. They never did. But on the fourth night, at exactly 1:11 a.m., the lights inside blinked. Um, and the front doors, they were wide open, as if they'd been waiting. I stepped out of my car and approached slowly. The night was too quiet. No wind, no crickets, just dead air pressing against my eardrums. The instant I crossed the threshold, I felt it again. The drop in temperature, the heavy pressure in my chest, like the air was thicker here, like breathing underwater. The lobby looked the same dusty, cracked tiles. Busted light fixtures flickering like half-dead fireflies, but everything felt too still, as if the building were holding its breath. I walked toward the security office like I had so many nights before, and when I opened the door, I stopped cold. I was already there, sitting in the chair, staring at the monitors. Same uniform, same face, but that thing wasn't me. Its eyes were wrong glassy, wide, too still, and it smiled, slowly, like someone stretching plastic over a skull. I backed away, slamming the door shut. The whispers returned instantly, this time, so loud they shook the floor tiles beneath my feet. Full circle. Final shift. Time to stay. I ran not to escape, but toward the basement. There had to be something down there. I hadn't dared to explore it before, not fully, but now it called to me. The stairs groaned under my weight as I descended, deeper than they should have gone. The air turned colder, wetter, like the walls were sweating something foul. At the bottom, I found a corridor of concrete and rust. Pipes lined the ceiling, water dripped rhythmically, like a ticking clock. At the end of the hall was a vault door. Old, industrial, bolted shut with a massive wheel in the center. It wasn't on any blueprint. I gripped the wheel with trembling hands and turned. The metal groaned, fought me, then gave way. And the door creaked open. Inside was a room filled with mirrors. Dozens, hundreds. Each mirror was fogged, except one. The one in the center. It showed me standing there, but behind me in the reflection, the shadow figures were gathering. I turned. No one there. I turned back, and in the mirror, they were closer. I took a step back. They moved forward. I stepped closer to the mirror. They stopped. I touched the glass. It was warm. Then a voice, my own, echoed behind me. If you walk through, you stay? I looked into the mirror again. My reflection now wore the building's uniform, the name tag. The dull expression, the dead stare. Then he blinked and spoke. It's not haunting you. It's inviting. The whispering crescendoed into a storm screams, chants, thousands of voices all saying the same thing. One of us. One of us. One of us. I had a choice. Run and never stop running. Or step forward and end the pull once and for all. I reached out. The mirror rippled like liquid, and I stepped through. Everything went silent. I woke up in the security office. Morning light bled through the cracked blinds. The monitors were quiet. The building was still. I checked the front. Doors. They opened. No whispers. No shadows. I walked outside into a calm, beautiful morning. But something was wrong. I passed a glass window and caught a glimpse of my reflection. It didn't move with me. It stayed frozen smiling. Later that day, I found a job listing online. Night security guard needed. Abandoned office complex. Same address. Same role. But now it listed a strange line in the job description. No experience necessary. No exit expected. The night welcomes you. And as I stared at the screen, I saw my reflection again, only this time. It was inside the monitor, watching, waiting, and smiling. I never meant for the attic to feel like a tomb, but that's what happened once the summer sun slipped behind the maples and left only dust-swirled twilight in its place. The space above my grandmother's house had always been a childhood maze of moth-eaten quilts and Christmas ornaments, yet that evening every cardboard box looked like a coffin. Plaster flakes drifted from the rafters each time I shifted a trunk, and the air tasted of old wood and something faintly metallic, almost like dried blood baked into antique floorboards. I was up there to separate keepsakes from junk, fulfilling the duty every grandchild dreads after a funeral. That's when I saw it. A slab of black plastic wrapped in a strip of sun-bleached muslin, wedged behind a stack of yellowed recipe cards. No label, no dates, just that blunt rectangle of a VHS tape, its reels frozen like lidless eyes. The moment my fingers brushed it, a chill ran the length of my arm, as though the cassette had been sitting in snow, not an oven-hot attic. For a heartbeat, I considered tossing it straight into the trash, but morbid curiosity is its own gravity. I pocketed the tape and climbed down the pull-down ladder, coughing dust and regret. The house grew dim while I dug my childhood VCR out of storage. I set everything on the coffee table, the living room curtains half drawn, so streaks of sunset bled across the carpet like diluted wine. As I slid the cassette home, the machine clacked an ugly mechanical swallow. Static grew onto the screen. Gray snow hissing like an electrical storm bottled inside the tube. Then an image resolved, a shaky, handheld shot of a two-story house I'd never seen. Ragged shutters banged in what must have been wind, though the microphone only caught underwater murmurs. Every few seconds, the footage juddered, frames warping as though reality itself were being creased. I leaned closer, pulse thudding in my throat. A hallway appeared narrow, wallpaper peeling in long scab-like strips. The camera stumbled forward until it faced a door at the very end. The doorknob jittered, rattled, stopped. Without warning. The entire picture ruptured white bars, black bars, a strobing kaleidoscope. In those flickers, I saw fragments that didn't belong. A child's hand groping out of darkness. A single milky eye pressed against the lens. The door trembling like something enormous slammed it from the other side. A power surge snapped through the house. Lamps flared, died, and the television coughed to black. The VCR whined as the tape spooled down, but the sudden silence felt deeper than any machine failure. I was left in near total dark, the only glow coming from my phone as I fumbled for its flashlight. Blue-white light carved the living room into sharp angles, but the fear rising in my gut had no geometry. It was all instinct. Behind me, the unplugged television clicked. Static bled back across the glass. I swung around just in time to see color sickly and dim bloom in the center of the screen. The hallway was back, but closer now, as though the cameraman had taken several impossible steps while the power was out. The door filled half the frame, wooden panels twitching with each invisible impact. My throat went dry. From deep inside. The speaker, though no cable fed sound anymore, came a whisper. It was delicate, frayed at the edges, a child's sing-song drifting on radio snow. You're not alone. The syllables dropped the room another 10 degrees. Sweat on my neck turned to ice. I tried rationalizing, residual charge, magnetic interference, a glitch in the ancient cathode tube. Yet the voice had weight, presence, warmth that fogged the inside of the screen. My hand shot to the wall socket anyway, yanking the VCR's power cord free. Sparks jumped. The machine went silent, but the image did not vanish. If anything, the picture sharpened. The hallway lights in the recording seemed brighter, painting the door in jaundiced yellow as it began to open. Just a few centimeters, enough to reveal breathing void beyond the threshold. Darkness moved inside that gap shifted, coalesced until something stepped forward. No face, only silhouette, impossibly tall, limbs wrong angled like a folding chair unfolded the wrong way. Its head turned as if noticing the camera, and by extension, me. Click every lamp in the house, extinguished at once. The television stayed alive, casting the only light, a ghostly rectangle that barely reached my knees. Within its glow, the figure leaned out of the doorframe, stretching nearer, the tape's grain-eating detail until the shape was just darkness with teeth. Then all was black screen, finally dead, house tomb silent. The whisper returned, no, longer from the speaker, but from every corner of the room at once, curling against my eardrums like cold breath. We see you. My flashlight stuttered, thin beam carving shadows that looked too thick, too crowded. I should have run then, fled into the street, and never looked back. Instead, I stared at the lifeless TV, frozen by a question more awful than anything the tape had shown. If the power was out, how had I heard the voice at all? The phone slipped in my sweaty grip. Its light wavered across the blank screen, and the reflection didn't belong to me alone. A second silhouette hovered over my shoulder, head cocked, indistinct but watching. You watched? It whispered. So close, the words vibrated my bones. Now you listen. I spun, light slashing emptiness, but the shape was gone. Behind me, circuitry crackled. The TV's glass pulsed softly once, twice like a heart restarting, and I realized the show wasn't over. The message came just before dawn. I hadn't slept. Couldn't. I'd spent the rest of the night huddled in a kitchen chair, the unplugged TV staring back at me like a dead eye. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the whisper again, "We see you." I kept the lights on, though. They flickered without reason, even surged once with a loud pop that knocked the wall clock dead. I didn't dare touch the VCR again, but the tape still sat there on the coffee table, like a cursed offering waiting to be acknowledged. When the message arrived, it buzzed loud enough to make me jump. Unknown number, no contact. Just a notification glowing on my screen like a warning flare. Don't turn it off again. My blood iced over. I stared at the screen, fingers numb. I tried to delete it. The screen froze. Then glitched. Then, suddenly, the message reappeared, larger. As if the phone itself wanted to make sure I read it. I powered the phone off. It turned back on by itself. I flung it across the room. It hit the floor hard, but didn't break. The screen remained lit, cycling that same text like a command. Don't turn it off again. I needed answers. Somewhere. In the panicked corners of my mind, a rational thought formed. The attic, I had found the tape there. Maybe it wasn't alone. Maybe something had left more. I climbed the stairs like I was ascending the gallows, flashlight in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other. The attic greeted me with its usual stale air and brittle silence. The dust hadn't settled since I'd last disturbed it. My light caught fragments of old belongings. My grandmother's rocking chair, her sewing mannequin with one arm missing, a stack of board games with swollen cardboard edges. I swept the beam around slowly until something caught the light. Just beside the spot where I'd found the tape half hidden beneath a blanket of newspaper, I spotted something new. A notebook. Old, cracked leather cover. Pages curled and stained. I flipped it open. The handwriting was frantic. Scrawled like someone had written with shaking hands in total darkness. The tape opens the door. They aren't just watching. They're learning. Don't let them inside. Flip. It doesn't matter if it's plugged in. Once you see them, they see you. Flip. The hallway is real. The door exists. The dreams are only warnings. I stopped breathing for a second, because that last line wasn't just familiar, it was true. Since watching the tape, my dreams had been crumbling. Every night I saw that door, heard the knock, watched something twist the knob from the other side, and always, I'd wake just before it opened. Until last night, until the power had cut out, until I had actually heard the voice in real life. I turned the next page and found a crude drawing, a floor plan, a narrow hallway with a door at the end. But scrawled over it in red pen were the words, "It's not in the tape, it's in the house." I dropped the notebook like it had burned me, and then downstairs a crash. The sound of something falling, glass shattering. I flew down the attic ladder, nearly tumbling as I hit the floor. My flashlight's beam danced wildly across the hallway. I could smell ozone and something faintly rotten. My foot crunched on glass when I entered the living room. The TV was back on, still unplugged. This time, the screen wasn't showing the hallway. It was showing my living room from above, like a surveillance camera mounted in the ceiling. I glanced up, nothing there. And yet, the image on screen showed me, standing exactly where I stood, flashlight shaking in my grip. The footage was delayed by less than a second, as though I were watching myself live on a corrupted stream. I stepped to the left. My reflection followed. Then behind my image movement. In the TV feed, a tall figure slid into frame behind me, its limbs too long, its presence shimmering like heat. It leaned closer toward the back of my head. I whirled around. Nothing there. My chest heaved. Sweat poured down my back. I stepped forward and touched the TV screen, hoping to smudge the glass and prove it was a trick. But the screen felt wet, damp, like skin, warm with an unnatural pulse. And that's when the whisper returned, closer than ever. You watch, no, we watch you. I leapt back. The screen rippled slightly, like disturbed water. I yanked the tape from the VCR and hurled it across the room. But before it even hit the floor, the TV image changed. Now it showed me present tense holding the tape, staring at it, frozen with fear. But I wasn't. I had already thrown it, which meant the tape was showing something else, something I hadn't done yet. A few seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Message from the same unknown number. The door is open. Come join us. And from the far end of the house, somewhere past the laundry room, I heard it, the creak of the basement door slowly swinging open. The sound of that basement door creaking open froze me where I stood. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the house settling. It was deliberate invitational. The kind of sound that waits to be noticed. The air shifted, colder somehow, thicker. My throat dried as I stepped toward the hallway. Each footstep on the hardwood floor echoed like it didn't belong to me. I passed the kitchen, the framed family photos on the wall seeming to tilt ever so slightly, like they were watching me too. When I reached the basement door, it was wide open, and at the bottom of the stairs was darkness. Not shadow, something heavier, the kind that swallows light. Still, something inside me knew I had to go down. It wasn't bravery, it was inevitability. Whatever this was, it wouldn't stop. Not while I still had the tape. Not while I still had breath. I clicked my flashlight back on. The beam flickered like a dying match. Each stair groaned under my weight as I descended. The smell of damp earth thickened with every step rot and mildew, like the inside of a coffin left too long in the rain. The flashlight barely reached. 10 feet in front of me, and I could feel something shifting just beyond its edge. At the bottom, the concrete floor was slick. My feet stuck slightly with every step, like the basement itself was trying to hold me. Then I saw it. The TV, how it had gotten down here, I didn't know. I had left it upstairs, unplugged. But there it was, sitting in the far corner, flickering faintly. No VCR, no tape. Just the screen on it. Me, standing in the basement, alone, scared. And behind me, shadows forming, I spun around. Nothing but black. The TV screen warped. The footage trembled like something was pressing against the inside of it, trying to get out. The static bled at the edges, and faint whispers started. Again. This time, they weren't words, but breathing. Heavy. Labored. Like something enormous just waking up. I tried to step backward, but my feet wouldn't move. I looked down, my shoes had sunk into the floor slightly. The concrete was ... soft. Like mud. The shadows around the edges of the basement rippled. Then the TV changed. It now showed the basement door, the one behind me, closing. Slowly. Silently. And then ... locking. I turned in time to see it latch shut. And I wasn't alone anymore. There was movement in the dark several shapes, shifting just outside the flashlight's range. I heard their feet dragging, whispering as they circled. The air thinned. My heart was racing, pounding so violently I could feel it in my throat. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I yanked it out, desperate for light, signal, anything. The screen lit up, and there it was again. A new message. You're in it now? I backed into the wall, hands searching for something, anything to use. As a weapon. My fingers found a rusted metal pipe leaning against an old boiler. I gripped it tight. The flashlight died. Only my phone screen remained. And then the figures stepped forward. 3 of them, Tall, slender, limbs too long, no faces, just a blur, like something caught between frames on a broken film reel. Their bodies shimmered, as if made of smoke, and static. One step closer, head tilted like it was studying me. The phone buzzed again. The tape is only the key. The house is the door. The TV screen lit up again, this time showing that hallway, the door at the end. Same one from the first time I played the tape. It was open now, wide, inside, nothing. But void. Then one of the figures turned and began walking toward the screen, and disappeared. Vanished into the TV. The other two followed, stepping into the glow like it was real. The TV hissed with static, and then I was alone again. Or so I thought. Something moved behind me fast. A breath on my neck. I spun, swinging the pipe. Nothing. The phone slipped from my hand. It hit the ground hard and landed screen up. One last message blinked to life. Come down the hall. And then I saw it. Where the concrete wall of the basement should have been a hallway. Narrow. Pale yellow light flickering. Same wallpaper. Same door at the end. Not on the TV screen this time. Real. I reached down slowly, picked up my phone, and stepped forward. Every part of me screamed to run, to wake up, to escape. But there was no waking up, not anymore. Because the tape didn't show the hallway, it created it. I stepped into the hallway like I was stepping out of my own body. It was impossible. I knew that. My basement ended in cinder block walls, a water heater, and storage shelves filled with boxes of old photo albums and Christmas lights. But now, there was a doorway, not a metaphor, not a hallucination. A real physical corridor had appeared, carved into the concrete like it had always been there, just waiting to be found. The air changed the moment I crossed the threshold. It smelled like mildew and burnt film. The wallpaper peeled in long curls. The overhead bulbs buzzed and blinked like dying fireflies. The hallway stretched on far longer than it should have. Fit under any house. Longer than physics allowed. And at the end, the door. Just like the one on the tape. I heard it close behind me. The basement, my home, the real world gone. Only the hallway now. My footsteps echoed in a way that made me feel like I wasn't walking alone. There was a rhythm in my steps, and another set, a beat behind, slightly out of sync. I turned around every few seconds, certain I'd see someone right behind me. But there was nothing. Yet the light bulbs above me began going out, one by one. Each time I took a step forward, another flickered, then popped, throwing more of the corridor into darkness behind me. The sound was sharp, like knuckles cracking. I quickened my pace. I didn't run, not yet. Halfway down, I passed an old mirror hanging crooked on the wall. Its glass was foggy, the silvering peeling off in patches like old skin. But when I looked into it, I didn't see myself. I saw the tape, playing on loop. Only this time the hallway on the screen was empty. Except for one thing. A figure standing behind the camera, still watching, and in the reflection of its eyes, I saw me. A vibration rippled through the hallway. The floorboards buckled slightly, as if something massive had just taken a single step far below. Or above, and then came the voices. Not whispers anymore. Chanting. Low, wet syllables spoken in a language I couldn't understand, but somehow knew. The same way you know how to scream when you're drowning. Ancient syllables meant to open something, or someone. I turned from the mirror and hurried the rest of the way toward the door. It was tall wooden iron hinges, black with age. The knob was rusted but still warm, like someone had just touched it. My hand trembled as I reached out. For a second, I thought I'd hear my heartbeat. But what I heard instead was the tape rewinding in my head, like it had never stopped playing, like my memories were being rewound too. And just before I opened the door, a thought bloomed in my skull like a rock. You've been here before. The door opened, not because I turned the knob, because it wanted to. The room beyond was circular, lit only by an old television in the center, playing static on loop. Along the curved walls were dozens of mirrors, each one covered in a thin veil of dust. I stepped inside, slowly. The air hummed with a soft vibration, like I was standing inside a throat mid-growl. The door shut behind me. No knob this time. No way back. Then the mirrors began to clear, one by one. In each reflection, I saw myself at different moments of my life. Sitting in my childhood bedroom, walking through my college dorm, standing in the attic holding the cursed tape. But in each reflection, there was something else, a tall shadow, closer in every image. It had been following me long before I ever found the tape. Watching, learning. In one mirror, I saw myself asleep in bed. In the next frame, eyes open. Next frame, mouth screaming. Next frame, gone. I backed toward the center of the room. The TV buzzed louder, and now it was playing a new scene. My apartment. Tonight, the front door slowly creaking open. A camera hovering above, watching everything. Then the screen shifted. A view of this room where I stood. The image zoomed in, closer and closer, until I could see my face. Eyes wide, breath shaking. And behind me, a figure. I turned. The room was empty. But the mirrors now showed only that shadow. No me, no world, just it. Taking my place, replacing me, I screamed. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. Because I remembered. I had seen this place before, in my dreams, in the static, in the corner of my eye, and I remembered something else, something terrible. I never left the hallway. There's something uniquely cruel about recognizing a nightmare as you're living it, not dreaming, not half awake, living it. I wasn't in a hallway anymore. Not exactly. I was in something beneath it. A pocket of space that didn't exist in any physical sense. A looping room wrapped in static and memory. And those mirrors, those awful mirrors, kept showing me versions of myself that I didn't remember living. Me staring blankly at a screen. Me whispering back to the whispers. Me smiling while a black shadow leaned down and whispered something into my ear. And the worst part? Some of those versions were still blinking, still moving, still alive somewhere. I pressed my hands against the cool glass of one mirror, trying to see where it led. My reflection did the same, but then it didn't stop. It kept pressing, harder, until the surface rippled. That version of me smiled, and stepped backward, gone, replaced by the shadow. A message flickered on the TV screen behind me. You're almost ready. I turned slowly, the static buzzing louder than ever. A face was beginning to form in the screen's noise pixelated and twitching, but unmistakably human. The eyes were hollow voids and the mouth was moving in silent conversation. It was me, but not me. It spoke again, louder this time, its voice coming not from the screen, but from everywhere. We needed someone to carry the signal. I stepped back. What are you talking about? I demanded. My voice sounded small, flat, like it didn't belong here. The tape is just the start. But you you can carry more. You've already begun. I looked down at my arms. Beneath the skin under the flashlight's dim beam, I saw them. Faint black lines. Not cuts, not bruises. Wires. Spindly and thin, like veins made of ink. Crawling just beneath the surface. I fell to my knees. No, I didn't ask for. This, you watched? That's all it takes? The mirrors shimmered again. This time, I saw other people. A woman crying in a motel room. A man screaming in his car as static bled from the speakers. A child holding an unplugged television, whispering into it like it was a phone. Each of them had seen it. Each of them had joined it. I understood then. The tape wasn't haunted. It was a virus, not digital, not biological, but spiritual. It infected belief. And once you believed it, once you accepted what it showed you, it rewrote you. The message appeared again, this time on the floor, the walls, the backs of my eyelids. You're not a viewer anymore. You're a transmitter. I screamed, and threw the flashlight against the wall. It burst in a shower of sparks, leaving me in choking darkness. Only the static remained flickering from the TV, the only light in this world. And the shadow in the center of it. It stepped forward now, out of the screen. No transition. Just there. It was tall, humanoid, but empty, its body like a suit made of black fog and fragments of VHS tape, fluttering in the electric breeze. Its mouth was a jagged, flickering smear of light. It raised one long, tapering hand, not to grab me, to offer. In its palm, the tape, the same one I had found in the attic. But now it had a label, handwritten. My name. No, I whispered. No, I won't. I won't spread it. You already have. The shadow didn't move. It just stood there, waiting. I turned and ran. Through the mirrors, through the hallway, through anything that looked like an exit. The world warped. Around me, walls twisting, floor peeling upward like celluloid film catching fire. The air burned in my lungs, but I kept running because I had to believe there was still a way out. Even if the tape was lying, even if I had already let it inside. I crashed through a door, any door. I was home, silence, my apartment. The kitchen light was on, the TV was off. I was standing in my living room, breathless, shaking, no basement, no mirrors, no shadow. Just thought back home. Something was wrong. The VCR was back, and inside it, the tape. I didn't put it there. And I noticed something else. The clock on the wall was spinning backwards. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One new message. From me. Record yourself watching it, then pass it on. I stared at the message on my phone, my hand trembling so violently I almost dropped. Record yourself watching it, then pass it on. It was in my text thread with my own number. The same name. The same photo. I checked the sent messages. There were others. Pages of them. Some to numbers I didn't recognize. Others to people I did. Friends. Co-workers. My old roommate. My cousin. All sent the same video. All captioned the same way. Hey, you gotta see this. It's insane. The tape. I had sent the tape. I didn't remember doing it, but it didn't matter. I understood now. It used me. Somehow, somewhere between watching it and waking up, I had become a transmitter. That's what it wanted. Not an audience, a delivery system. And now the virus wasn't just on magnetic tape anymore. It was digitized, streamable, shareable. I moved slowly toward the VCR. The tape was sticking out slightly. Its label still handwritten, smudged like it had touched by wet fingers. It had my name on it, but now something was written beneath. It, copy complete, and next to the VCR, my laptop, open, camera on, red light blinking. It had been recording the whole time. Streaming, maybe. Uploading, or worse, broadcasting. I slammed the lid shut and ripped the tape from the VCR, snapping the cassette in two. The tape inside fluttered like a ribbon, hissing in the air. The power went out. Silence. Then a knock. I turned to the front door. Another knock. Not hard. Not loud. Just dot 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 steady. Knock. 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 3 beats. Like the sound that echoed behind my footsteps on that first night. I looked through the peephole, expecting shadows, something monstrous. But it was a delivery driver, confused, holding a box. He smiled when he saw me and held it out. Package for you. No return address. I took it. It was light, cold. I didn't open it. Not yet. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a deep chill slide through the apartment. The lights flickered back on. The TV buzzed softly. It was on again, even though it wasn't plugged in. The screen showed a familiar image, a hallway, and the same old door at the end. But this time, the door was wide open, and through it I saw my apartment. Me, watching the screen. Real time. The camera panned closer, closer, until it was right up against my face. And I saw something reflected in my eyes. Not fear, not pain. JUST acceptance. The screen flickered and turned black. Then a message appeared in flickering white letters. You're the tape now. I backed away slowly. My phone buzzed one last time. A final message from that number, or maybe from me. It's your turn to share it. I stood in the center of the room, every light off except the static glow of the screen. The package sat at my feet, and in that moment, I realized there's no ending, only transmission, because the tape isn't haunted. It's alive. And now, so am I just a shadow hiding in the frame, waiting, recording, ready for the next set of eyes. I've always preferred the quiet solitude of night shifts. There's something peaceful about the stillness between midnight and dawn. No angry customers, no coworkers hovering, just me and the hum of buzzing lights. The gas station where I work sits out in the middle of nowhere, on a stretch of highway swallowed by forest. On most nights, the only visitors I get are the moths that tap against the windows or the occasional trucker looking for caffeine. But that all changed on my second night. It was just after 2 a.m. when it happened. I was leaning against the counter, half asleep and scrolling through my phone when a pair of headlights cut through the trees. They were too bright unnaturally so, like high beams burning straight into my skull. The vehicle coasted slowly into the lot. It was an old beat-up sedan, the kind you'd expect to see abandoned on the side of the road with rusted doors and one missing hubcap. But this one was running just fine, too fine. It pulled up to the first pump, and then nothing. I waited for someone to get out to stretch their legs, maybe grab a drink or use the bathroom. But the doors never opened. The engine purred steadily, a low rumble that somehow felt louder than it should have in the stillness of night. I peered through the smudged glass of the station's front window, trying to get a look at the driver. But the windshield was pitch black, like someone had tinted it with coal dust. I stayed behind the counter and watched. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then, just as silently as it had come, the car reversed slowly and pulled away. Its taillights disappeared into the tree-lined highway, swallowed by the dark. Weird, sure, but I chalked it up to a tired traveler. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe they realized they didn't have their wallet. Hell, maybe they were just lost. But then it happened again, the next night. 2 a.m. sharp, same car, same pump, same nothing. I felt it before I saw it this time. The temperature in the store dropped suddenly, like someone had left a freezer door wide open. My breath fogged the air in front of me, and the glass doors began to fog as well. Then came the headlights, flooding the station in white. The car pulled in again, identical to the night before, no plate, windows blacked out, no sound but that deep mechanical growl. I got a strange feeling in my chest. A sort of weight like something heavy pressing down. Not fear, exactly. Just pressure. Again, I waited. Again, no one got out. Again, after a few minutes, the car backed out and drove away, slow and deliberate. By the third night, I couldn't play it cool anymore. It was like clockwork. I stood by the window at 1:59 a.m., coffee in hand, watching the highway. I didn't even flinch when the headlights appeared through the trees. My body was tense, every nerve buzzing. The car slid into the same position as before, engine purring, lights glaring. But this time something changed. The air got thick, suffocating. A faint mist began to creep in under the door, curling along the floor like smoke. I smelled something sharp and rotten, like burnt hair and spoiled meat. My skin prickled with goosebumps, and I felt a faint pressure in my ears, like being submerged. Underwater, that's when I saw it. A face pressed against the passenger side window, hollow-eyed, expressionless. It wasn't just staring in my direction. It was staring at me. I dropped the coffee. It shattered against the tile, and the sound jolted me back into motion. I grabbed the flashlight from under the counter and flung the door open. The moment the cold night air hit me, the engine roared. The car peeled out of the lot, tires screeching across the pavement, leaving behind a thick trail of black smoke that stank of death. I stood there in the fog, heart racing, watching the taillights vanish into the forest. Back inside, I locked the door. My hands were shaking. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at nothing before I thought to check the security cameras. I pulled up the footage and skipped to 2 a.m. Nothing. The screen jumped straight from 1:58 to 2:12, completely skipping the window in which the car had been there. Just a stretch of corrupted footage static, flickers, and audio distortion that sounded like whispering. Faint, unintelligible, but unmistakably voices. That's when my phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting some junk notification or maybe a text from my supervisor, but it was from an unknown number. Don't go outside. That was all it said. No name, no sender. Just those 4 words. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to convince myself it was a prank. That someone nearby was messing with me. But how would they know? I hadn't told anyone, not a soul. And worse, I hadn't gone outside the first 2 nights. Only tonight. I deleted the message, but the sense of dread lingered long after. I couldn't unsee that face. I couldn't ignore that feeling in my chest, that weight, that pressure. That kept growing heavier with each passing night. I didn't want to believe it, Ben, but I know better now. That car doesn't just come to visit, it comes to watch. And tonight I have the sickening feeling that it wants more than just to be seen. The next morning I didn't sleep. I kept going over it in my mind, watching the message on my phone flash behind my eyes. Don't go outside. Over and over like a warning burned into my brain. I told myself I was overthinking it, that it was all just coincidence. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. There's a difference between paranoia and instinct. And my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. I didn't call anyone. Who would I even tell? My boss. The cops. Hey, there's this ghost car that visits the gas station every night at exactly 2 a.m. and stares at me. And now I'm getting psychic text messages. I'd be laughed off the planet. No, I needed proof. So that evening, I arrived at the gas station an hour early, just as the sun was setting. I grabbed a blank USB drive from the back office and started reviewing every security feed from the past few nights. Frame by frame, everything looked normal. Until I hit 2 a.m., just like before, the footage was corrupted. Not missing, distorted. The timestamp didn't skip this time. Instead, it flickered violently. The image warped and stretched like something pressing against the lens from the inside. Shadows pulsed across the screen, shapes that almost resembled people but not quite. Then the audio kicked in, low at first. Static, then breathing. Not mechanical. Not digital. Human. Panicked. Then a voice whispered through the speakers. So soft I had to crank the volume to max just to hear it. It's easier. I ripped the headphones off and yanked the drive out of the computer. I didn't care how insane it sounded. I needed to know what I was dealing with. I stepped outside, clutching the USB like it held a lifeline, and stood in the cold twilight air. The woods around the station rustled softly with wind and unseen creatures, but the highway was empty. No headlights, no cars, not yet. By the time midnight rolled around, I had checked the doors 5 times and double-checked the locks. I'd turned off the music I usually played to stay awake. I wanted to hear everything. Every bump. Every whisper. Every breath. I kept the USB in my coat pocket and the flashlight in my hand. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. At exactly 2 a.m., the temperature dropped again. The mist crept through the cracks in the door like it had a mind of its own. Thick, damp, icy. I didn't need to look outside. I knew it was there. Still, I forced myself toward the window. I had to see it with my own eyes. Had to confront it. There it was. Same car. Same spot. Headlights on. Idling. But this time, the driver's window was down. A pale arm hung out casually, capping slow and steady against the door. The fingers were long, impossibly thin, curled like claws. The skin, if you could call it that, looked stretched too tight over bone. Veins bulged under the surface, black like oil. I stared, frozen. The tapping stopped. The arm slowly retreated inside. Then the passenger door creaked open. I dropped the flashlight. Inside the car, I saw movement, something hunched in the back seat. shifting just enough for the light to catch a glimmer of its face. I couldn't make it out fully, but I saw the eyes, glowing, watching. Then it moved again, fast. The door slammed shut, so violently it echoed through the trees. The headlights dimmed. The engine revved once, and the car peeled out of the lot, tires screeching as it vanished into the woods once more. The air around me went dead silent. Not even crickets. Just the faint ringing in my ears and the heavy thump of my own heart. I stumbled back inside, fumbling to relock the door. I collapsed behind the counter, sucking in breaths like I'd just escaped drowning. Then my phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number again. You shouldn't have seen that. I wanted to scream. Throw the damn thing across the room. But I didn't. I opened the message. A second later, an image downloaded automatically. It was a still from the gas station security camera, but not one I'd seen. The angle was different, higher, looking down at me. The image showed me standing frozen at the window, staring at the car. Behind me in the image stood a figure, thin, tall, inhumanly tall. Its head was tilted, watching. I spun around. In the real world, heart hammering, flashlight shaking in my grip, nothing, but I didn't feel alone anymore. The station wasn't just haunted, it was being watched. And I had the sickening realization that whatever was in that car had been inside the station with me the entire time. I didn't leave after my shift ended. Couldn't. I sat slumped behind the counter, bathed in the buzzing white light of fluorescence, still clutching the USB in my phone like they could protect me from whatever was stalking me. The image, the one of me being watched from inside, was seared into my brain. I kept the phone screen off, but it didn't matter. I'd memorized every detail. And now I was afraid to look away from the security monitors. Afraid that if I blinked for even a second, that thing would be standing behind me again. Around 5 a.m., the power flickered. Not enough to shut everything down, but just enough to send the station into a brief seizure of darkness and buzzing. Static. The lights came back, but dimmer now, as if the building was losing strength or resisting. I didn't leave the gas station until broad daylight. Even then, I checked the parking lot 3 times before getting into my car. The old beater, I drove wheezed to life like it didn't want to wake up. The highway was empty as usual, and the forest beyond it was still and quiet. But something had changed. The air felt wrong. Not cold like before, just heavy. Like the world was watching me now. And I wasn't sure if I was alone in the car. I kept glancing in the rearview mirror the whole drive home. I don't know what I expected to see glowing eyes. That skeletal arm? A second version of myself slumped in the back seat, grinning. But the mirror only showed me. Until it didn't. Halfway home, the sun rising behind the trees. I glanced up and, for a fraction of a second, I swear I saw something in the back seat. A shadow, just barely visible. But it moved. And when I turned around, nothing. Still, I drove the rest of the way with the windows down, just to hear if anything breathed that wasn't me. I took a day off, called in sick, claimed food poisoning. It wasn't exactly a lie. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept, and I felt like death. I couldn't stop replaying that image, the figure in the station with me. And then there was the passenger door, the way it opened on its own, the figure in the back seat. It was escalating. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the tapping, not just faintly, loud, right outside. I checked every window in my apartment. Nothing, no car, no headlights, no whispering voices. But the smell gasoline and rot lingered in the hallway, like it had followed me home. I locked every door, slept on the couch with the bat beside, me and the flashlight gripped in my hand. I left the TV on, volume low, just so the silence wouldn't suffocate me. Around 2 a.m., the screen flickered. Just once. A faint glitch in the broadcast. And for a moment, the static returned. But it wasn't white noise, it was breathing. I returned to work the next night. The fear hadn't gone away, but something stronger had taken its place. Curiosity. I had to know. Had to understand what this thing wanted. And part of me suspected that staying away only made it angrier. I arrived at 10 p.m., armed with a fresh pack of batteries, two USB drives, and a bottle of cheap black coffee that tasted like burnt tires. The place was quiet, still, but the second I stepped inside, the air shifted, like the building remembered me. The lights buzzed louder than usual. The doors creaked even when they were still. And the monitors, well, one of them was already on the fritz. The top left screen showed the parking lot, but the image kept twitching, glitching like something was trying to push through. I sat behind the counter, watching the clock. 11:15, 12:34, 1:50. And then the power surged. Everything flickered, screens, lights, even my phone. The parking lot camera went black, and at exactly 2 a.m. I heard it. The low, rumbling purr of an engine idling outside. I didn't get up immediately. I just sat there, breathing through my nose, willing myself to stay calm. Then the text came. Unknown number. No contact name. No history? Passenger seat. Look. I froze. My hand hovered over the flashlight. Passenger seat of my car? Or there's my legs moved on their own. I stepped toward the glass door, heart in my throat, and looked out. The car was there, parked in its usual spot, headlights on, idling. But this time the passenger door was open. A figure sat inside, fully visible now, not in shadow, not obscured. It was a man, or something that used to be a man. His skin was gray and sagging, like it had dried and cracked. Over time, his eyes were pure black, no whites, no irises, just voids. His mouth hung open slightly, revealing rows of jagged teeth, each one too sharp, too long. But worst of all, he was wearing a gas station uniform, one just like mine. Same patch, same name tag, same name. I stumbled back, nearly knocking over the chair behind me. The phone buzzed again. Come sit down. I stared at the message on my phone, my fingers trembling so hard I almost dropped it. Come sit down. The words glowed on the screen like a brand. I glanced out the glass door again, hoping I'd imagined it, but no. He was still there, still sitting in the passenger seat of that rusted out car, still wearing my uniform, still staring at me with those bottomless black eyes. And worst of all, now he was smiling. A slow, deliberate, crooked smile that cracked. His withered face like breaking dry leather. I took a step back, then another, until my back hit the shelves behind the counter. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't just a ghost. Or a hallucination. It was me. No, not quite. A version of Marin, warped, dried out like a corpse left too long in the sun. The lights inside the gas station flickered again. The hum of electricity rose into a high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to do anything but go outside. But my feet wouldn't move. I was locked in place, caught between two impossible choices. Face the thing in the car or wait for it to come in. The phone buzzed again. Another message. I couldn't take it anymore. I yanked the flashlight off the counter, grabbed a metal bat from its usual place, and burst through the door into the freezing night air. The cold hit me like a slap. I approached the car, boots crunching on the cracked pavement, heart hammering in my chest. The headlights dimmed as I got closer, like the car was reacting to my presence. The fog around it grew thicker, rolling out across the lot like smoke from a fire I couldn't see. Who are you? I yelled, my voice shaky but loud enough to echo off the tree line. The thing in the passenger seat didn't move. I took another step forward, flashlight beam trembling as I raised it to the window. That was when I saw his left hand. It was resting on the dash, and it had 6 fingers. Not like a birth defect. No. The 6th finger was stitched on crudely, with black thread that had long since rotted. The skin was uneven, sagging. The seams like it didn't belong to him. He raised the hand slowly and tapped on the windshield with that extra finger. Tap, tap, tap. Then the door on the driver's side swung open. on its own. The whispers returned, no longer distant. Number. Longer teasing? Now they were close. All around me. In my ears, in my head. He's done his shift. It's your turn now, dot, 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 sit down, dot, dot, dot. I stepped back, raising the bat. My knees were weak. I didn't think I could swing it if I had to. I'm not going with you, I shouted. I'm not getting in that thing. The smile on the corpse's face widened grotesquely wide now, stretching from ear to ear. The engine revved. The car shook violently. The whispers stopped. And for a second, there was absolute silence. Then the figure in the passenger seat vanished, gone in the blink of an eye. I turned to run back inside, and that's when I saw it. The real horror. The security monitors. Through the glass, I could see every screen now showing a new angle. Footage I had never seen before. Footage of me, sleeping, eating, showering. Footage from inside my apartment. Footage from places where no cameras should be. And in every frame there was the car. Sometimes parked across the street. Sometimes reflected in a window. Sometimes right outside my bedroom, headlights off, watching. My stomach dropped. They'd been watching me long before I ever started working here. I barricaded the gas station after that. Shoved shelves in front of the doors, unplugged the register, and killed the lights. I sat in the corner with the bat and flashlight clutched tight, waiting for dawn. But the night wouldn't end. The clock stayed at 2 a.m., no matter how long I waited. No matter how many times I checked my phone, the time never changed. The gas station had become a pocket, a loop, time held hostage. Outside, I could still hear the engine running. Still, smell the gasoline and rot. And when I peered through the gaps in the boards, I saw it, the car still sitting there. Lights off now, silent, waiting. I thought maybe if I stayed hidden, if I didn't acknowledge it, the loop would break. But I was wrong, because at some point during that endless hour, I looked up and the car was gone. But the door to the station was open, and the smell was inside. The door creaked open behind me, slow and deliberate, like it was daring me to look. I didn't want to. I knew what I would see. Still, I turned. There was no car now. No figure in the doorway. Just the long stretch of empty darkness beyond the threshold, and the faint scent of rotting leaves and gasoline creeping through the air like fog. But the door was wide open, and the time on the wall clock still read 2 a.m. I slowly approached, bat raised, every step hesitant. My shoes scuffed the tiles, the only sound in the dead silence. When I reached the door, I looked outside. The lot was empty. No car, no lights, no fog. The whole world beyond the threshold looked ... wrong. Off. Too still. Like a painted backdrop. Instead of reality, I should have closed the door. I should have gone back inside, waited for dawn that might never come. But something drew me forward. As I stepped outside, the air changed. Heavier, pressing down on my chest. The ground beneath. My feet felt soft, spongy, like moss after a rain, though it hadn't rained in days. And the lights from the gas station? When I turned back to look, the building was gone. I spun in a slow circle, heart pounding. I was surrounded by trees now, tall and ancient. Their bark looked charred, blackened like it had been burned long ago. No wind stirred their branches. No animals stirred. Then I saw the path. A dirt trail winding between the trees, lit by faint lanterns that swayed though there was no breeze. It was carved into the earth like a wound. I followed it. I don't know why. Maybe because I knew I had no other choice. The further I went, the colder it got. My breath turned to mist in the air, and my bones ached with the chill. After what felt like hours, I reached a clearing, and in the center of that clearing, the car. Same rusted out frame, same cracked windshield, same stench, but this time the doors were open, and seated inside were others. People in gas station uniforms, old and new. Some looked fresh, like they had just walked off their shift. Others looked mummified, as if they'd been sitting there for decades. All of them stared ahead, unmoving, eyes wide. Mouths agape, like they were frozen in their last scream. I stumbled back in horror, and that's when I saw the sign behind. The car. It was almost completely rotted away, but the words were still visible. Welcome to your post. We never close. I turned to run, but someone was standing behind me. An old man in the same uniform I wore. His name tag said Charlie. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. You saw the tape, didn't you? He asked, voice like crumbling paper. What tape? I stammered. He tilted his head. You think it starts with the car? It doesn't. It starts with curiosity. With watching, the car is just to delivery. I shook my head. I didn't watch any tape. He smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. You don't have to. Someone before you did. Now you're part of it. I backed away, heart racing. I didn't ask for this. None of us did. He pointed to the figures in the car. That's us, the watchers. The ones who stayed too long. The ones who asked too many questions. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But my legs gave out. I dropped to my knees as the air turned thick with whispers again. Take your seat. Take your shift. That clock in. Charlie reached into his pocket and pulled out a time card. My name was written on it in thick red ink. Punch in. He whispered. I woke up gasping for air, slumped over the counter at the gas station. The lights flickered above me. The door was locked again. Everything looked normal. Almost. But the clock still read 2 a.m. The calendar on the wall, the dates were wrong. All the days circled in red were tomorrow. And taped to the front of the register, written in blocky, fading letters, was a new sign. Employee of the month, Charlie, 57 years of service. I turned to the window. And in the reflection, I saw the car pulling in again. And this time, I was already in the passenger seat. I blinked hard, my breath catching in my throat. In the reflection, I was sitting in the passenger seat of that cursed car still. Pale, my eyes wide and vacant like the others I had seen in the clearing. But when I turned around to look outside, the lot was empty. No car, no headlights. Just the low hum of the station lights and the gentle rustling of the trees far off. In the darkness, still, something had changed. I could feel it in my bones. A weight, like an anchor dragging me downward. The next few nights passed in a strange, almost dreamlike fog. Every shift blurred into the next. I barely ate, barely slept. I started seeing things on the security cameras, glimpses of that car parked out front, even when the feed was completely cut off. Sometimes I saw my own face staring back at me from the grainy footage. Sometimes I wasn't even moving. Sometimes I wasn't blinking. I started marking time the old-fashioned way-scratching tallies into the underside of the counter. But no matter how many I made, it never felt like time was passing. The sun would rise but I'd blink. And it would be night again. And always at 2 a.m., the car returned. Each time it came, it parked a little closer. Each time, the fog crept a little further inside. Each time, the smell of rot clung to the air longer. I tried everything to break the cycle. I unplugged every light, smashed the cameras, even tried to torch the fuel pumps in a desperate attempt to escape. But no matter what I did, the fire never started. The wires repaired themselves. The cameras flickered back on, and the car always came back. One night I ran. I didn't clock out. I didn't wait for 2 a.m. I just grabbed my coat and ran down the highway, screaming into the dark. I didn't stop for miles, my legs screaming, lungs burning. But eventually I saw a familiar shape up ahead, a small building. Flickering lights, a sign that read, 24-hour gas and go, my gas station. I had somehow run in a perfect loop. There was no escaping this place. I was trapped, and then I began to notice something even worse. The customers. They used to be normal. Truckers, sleepy, travelers, college kids on late-night road trips. But now, they were changing. Their skin looked gray, waxy, like plastic stretched too tight. Their eyes were always fixed on me, unblinking. Their mouths never moved. But I could hear their voices whispering inside my skull. Shift change is coming. Shift change is coming, They didn't buy anything. They didn't even speak. They just watched me. Every night, they grew a number, filling the store, standing shoulder to shoulder, unmoving, like mannequins waiting for a signal. And through all of it, the car still came, parked, idled, left, never anyone inside. And yet, I was never alone. One night, I tried calling the police. My phone worked for once. I got a voice on the other end. But it wasn't a dispatcher. It was me, my own voice, screaming, begging, calling for help. I hung up, threw the phone. Away. It rang again. The screen just read, "You're next." That same night at 1:59 a.m., something shifted. The gas station lights died. Everything went black. No hum, no buzz. Just silence. And then headlights, bright as the sun. Cutting through the darkness. The car. It pulled in slowly. This time, it didn't idle. This time, the doors opened. I should have run. Screamed. Brayed. Instead, I walked out to meet it. Drawn like a moth to flame. Inside, it was empty. But the driver's seat was warm. I sat down. The door shut by itself. The world around me vanished. I woke up behind the counter. Same gas station, same flickering lights, same endless highway stretching into blackness. But now there was a framed photo next to the register, a Polaroid. My face, smiling, vacant. Underneath, a nameplate read, "Employee of the Month. My name, years of service, eternal." The clock struck 2 a.m. The car pulled in. This time, someone else sat behind the wheel. They looked tired, afraid, new. The engine rumbled low. And the voice in my head whispered, "Your shift is over. Clock out. Let them take your place." And I knew I wasn't just a part of the station anymore. I was the station. And I'd be waiting for the next soul to take the night shift. I took the night janitor job because I needed money, simple as that. It wasn't glamorous, but the hours worked for me. No traffic, no people, no drama. Just me, my mop, and a paycheck. The store was old, a crumbling department chain barely, holding on with its dim fluorescent lights and faded sale banners that hadn't been changed in years. Still, it was quiet, and that's what I liked. Quiet meant easy. I didn't think much about the mannequins at first. There were dozens of them scattered throughout the store, in fashionable outfits from 3 seasons ago. Some half-naked, forgotten in corners, with chipped paint and missing limbs. They creeped me out a little, sure, but they were just plastic, nothing to worry about. But even on the first night, something felt off. It started in the men's section. I had just come up the escalator with a mop bucket when I noticed it. One of the mannequins was turned around. Not just slightly. Like maybe someone bumped into it earlier. I mean, fully rotated. Its head craned around to face the escalator I'd just stepped off of. I stood there for a minute, staring at it, trying to remember if that's how it had been when I passed through earlier. I couldn't be sure. I hadn't really been paying attention. I shook it off. The store had been open all day. Probably a kid messing around. Maybe someone spun it for a joke. I went back to mopping the floors, doing my best not to glance at the damn thing. But when I turned to grab my supply cart again, my breath caught in my throat. The mannequin had moved. It was now standing at the top of the escalator. One arm raised slightly, almost like it was waving. I blinked. I must have been seeing things. I walked over to it slowly. Its face was blank as ever, plastic smooth with that eerie hollowness. I put my hand on its shoulder and gave it a push. It didn't move. Heavy. Definitely not the kind of thing that would just fall over or reposition itself on its own. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. First night nerves. Sleep deprivation. I left it there and continued working. Later, in the women's accessories section, I heard a faint tapping sound coming from the direction of the stockroom. The rest of the store was silent completely, unnaturally quiet. No pipes groaning, no hum. Just that soft, rhythmic tapping, like fingers drumming on the countertop. I crept over to the stockroom door and pushed it open. Nothing. Just boxes. And shelves stacked with unsold merchandise. But when I turned back around, my stomach flipped. The mannequin that had been by the entrance earlier, it was now standing just a few feet from the stockroom door. There was no doubt. I had passed it when I entered, and it was at least 20 feet away from where it stood now. I backed up slowly, heart hammering in my chest. Its face was pointed, directly at me. A blank canvas with two cold, eyeless holes locked onto mine. I didn't sleep much that day. The second night, I came back armed with a thermos of coffee, a can of pepper spray, and my phone set to record. I mounted it on a shelf in the women's section, pointing it at the mannequins lined up along the glass window. It felt ridiculous, but I needed proof. I needed to know if I was just losing it. For the first hour, nothing happened. I cleaned up a shattered jar from housewares, wiped down the customer service counter, and avoided looking too long at the mannequins. Then, around 2 a.m., the tapping started again. Closer this time. I followed the noise slowly, heart thudding as I moved between racks of clothes and shadowy displays. My flashlight jittered with each nervous step, the beam cutting through the darkness in small, useless slivers. I turned the corner and stopped dead. The same mannequin from the night before was now at the end of the aisle, halfway between where I had left it and the stockroom. Its hand was raised again, and I swear to God its fingers were curled just a little, like it was beckoning me. I bolted to the break room and locked the door behind me, heart slamming in my chest. I yanked my phone out to check the footage I had recorded earlier, hoping I'd caught anything that could explain this. What I saw made my skin crawl. At first, the mannequins didn't move. But then, one by one, they turned their heads toward the camera. Slowly, deliberately, their arms shifted positions. Their torsos twisted. By the last few seconds of the clip, all of them had gathered close to the camera, standing in a perfect semicircle, staring straight into the lens. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from an unknown number. You shouldn't have seen that. I dropped the phone. The break room lights flickered. The tapping had stopped. I stepped cautiously toward the exit, but as I reached for the door, I froze. Just beyond the glowing red exit sign, one of the mannequins was waiting. Right in front of the door, like it knew I was coming. Like it had been waiting for me. I didn't know how long I stood there staring at the mannequin by the door. Time seemed to stretch in that cold, fluorescent hallway. It hadn't moved now, visibly, but the way it stood, angled slightly toward me, hand raised like it was gesturing. Come here. Chilled me more than if it had lunged outright. I had to leave. Whatever was happening, I wasn't staying in that building a second longer. With shallow breaths, I crept forward. My eyes locked on the mannequin's pale, and soulless. Every step echoed through the empty store. When I reached the door, I hesitated. I didn't want to touch it, but I had no choice. I reached for its shoulder, and the moment my hand touched the cold plastic, I swore I felt it flex under my fingers. I jerked away with a gasp, stumbling, back, heart pounding in my throat. The mannequin didn't move again. It just stood there like a statue, only now it felt more like a predator playing dead. I slipped around it, hand trembling as I unlocked the exit and pushed the heavy door open. Cool air hit my face. The night outside was dead silent. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I ran to my car, threw myself into the seat, and peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching. My hands were shaking the entire drive home. When I got into my apartment, I bolted the door and turned every light on. The silence was different here. It felt safe, or at least I convinced myself of that. But even as I showered, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I could still hear that tapping sound in the back of my skull, like phantom footsteps trailing just a few seconds behind mine. I didn't sleep. The next day, I convinced myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the store just had some weird wiring. Maybe the mannequins weren't moving, and I was just hallucinating from the stress, the long hours, the late nights. I told myself I'd go back, finish one more shift. If something else happened, I'd walk out and never return. But part of me needed to know, needed to prove I wasn't crazy. I got there early. 10:30 p.m. The manager had already left. He never stayed past 9. The store was mine again, and everything looked as it should, except for one thing. The mannequins had been rearranged, all of them. Instead of standing at their display stations, they were gathered in the center of the showroom, lined up in perfect rows like an audience, watching the front entrance. I stood in the doorway for a long time, my keys frozen in my hand. No one else should have had access. No one had a reason to move them. And yet there they were, 23 mannequins, all facing me, like they were waiting. I turned on the lights, and the fluorescent hum returned, familiar and oddly comforting. I grabbed my cleaning supplies and started my rounds, determined to act like nothing was wrong. Ignore the mannequins. Clean the floors. Do my job. Leave. Simple. But every aisle I entered, one would be there, standing still, watching me. I'd sweep past the electronics section, and a mannequin in a red polo would be waiting at the end cap. I'd wipe down the windows, and I'd see another's reflection behind me, though, when I turned around. It was gone. The tapping started again, soft but relentless, always just a few steps behind me. By 1:30 a.m., I was breaking. I returned to the break room, pulled out my phone, and checked the camera app. I'd left it recording again, this time pointed toward the registers. I hit playback and froze. The footage showed the mannequins moving, not walking, but jumping from one frame to the next like a stop-motion animation. In 1 second they were far back, then closer. Then, all at once, clustered around the camera. Their faces leaned into the lens. One had its hand pressed flat against it, plastic fingers splayed like it was trying to reach through the screen. The video ended with static. Then my phone buzzed. Another message from the same unknown number. Don't run. You're part of the display now. My hands went numb. I could barely breathe. Then cap, tap, tap from just beyond the break room door. I turned off the lights, held my breath. More tapping, then a click. The break room doorknob slowly turned. I grabbed the mop from the corner, holding it like a spear, heart slamming in my chest. The door creaked open an inch. I waited, nothing, then lightning fast. Hand pushed through the crack. I screamed, jamming the mop into the gap and slamming the door shut. I shoved the break room table in front of it, backing away as the doorknob rattled violently. And then silence. No tapping. No movement. Just my own panicked breathing and the buzz of the vending machine. I waited like that for 15 minutes, before I finally summoned the courage to move the table and push open the door again. The hallway was empty. But down the corridor, near the registers, all 23 mannequins were gathered again. And this time, they were all posed like they were screaming. Arms outstretched, hands clawing at the air, mouths wide open and silent. Horror. I didn't clean another square inch. I bolted out of there, left everything behind. As I reached my car, another message buzzed through. See you tomorrow. I didn't respond. I didn't look back. I drove straight home, heart pounding, fingers white-knuckled around the steering wheel. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I half expected to see one of them sitting in the back seat. I didn't breathe easy until I was inside my apartment with every light on and the door locked. I didn't go back the next night, didn't call in, didn't quit. Just didn't show up. I sat on the couch, watching the clock tick past 2 a.m., telling myself it was over, that the mannequins were confined to that store, that they couldn't follow me home. But the tapping started again, soft, barely audible. But I heard it. At first, it came from the pipes, then the walls, then from inside the hallway closet. I held my breath and crept toward it, bat in hand. I yanked the door open, ready for anything, nothing, just coats, old boxes. But as I turned to walk away, my phone lit up on the table. One new message. No number, just the words, "You forgot to clock out." The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I didn't sleep. Not a wink. I left every light on and kept the back close. But morning eventually came, and with it a sick, fleeting sense of safety. The sun was out, The tapping had stopped. I convinced myself it had all been some breakdown, sleep deprivation, stress, hallucinations, maybe. But that night, without me there, the alarms went off at the store. My manager called, frustrated, asking why I hadn't locked up properly. Said they'd found the back door wide open. Supplies scattered, one of the mannequins broken, except I hadn't touched that one. And broken wasn't the right word. The photos they sent showed it melted, misshapen, like it had been burned or twisted, like it had fought something. Or someone still, I didn't go back. I sent a message, said I quit, that I wasn't coming back ever. No reply. That night, around 2 a.m., I heard a crash in my living room. I jumped out of bed, grabbed the bat, and ran toward the noise. The window was wide open, and lying on the floor in the center of the room was a mannequin's hand. Cold, plastic, and freshly broken. I didn't scream. I just stared. Then my phone buzzed again. "We told you, you can't leave." I was trapped in my own home, the tapping growing louder with each passing second. It was as if the mannequins had followed me slipping through. Whatever veil had separated them from this world. My breaths were shallow, every gasp clouding the cold air in my apartment. It wasn't just fear anymore. The temperature had dropped so drastically, I could see my breath in the glow of the hallway. Light. I tightened my grip on the bat, inching toward the source of the sound. Cap. Cap. It echoed off the walls like plastic fingernails against tile. I moved slowly toward my living room, each step cautious, like I was navigating a minefield. The lights above me flickered once, twice, then buzzed back to life. The tapping stopped. Silence. I scanned the room, heart pounding, expecting to see one of those soulless plastic faces grinning at me from the shadows, but everything looked normal. The couch, the TV, the half-empty glass of water on the table. Normal. I tried to breathe to convince myself that maybe I was imagining it all. But deep down, I knew better. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Look behind you. I spun around so fast I nearly slipped on the hardwood floor. Nothing. Just the empty hallway. But I wasn't fast enough. From the corner of my eye, something shifted a flicker of white. I turned again, bat raised, but once more, the hallway was empty. I backed into my bedroom and slammed the door. I'd propped a chair under the knob and turned on every light. The hum of the ceiling bulb was a small comfort. Still, I couldn't shake the sensation that I was no longer alone. That something was just beyond my vision, waiting for me to blink. I sat on the bed, gripping my phone, bat beside me, trying to think logically. I'd destroyed one of them, shattered it into pieces, but it had come back together, reassembled, itself like it was made to. That wasn't just some cursed object, that was something alive, or at least animated by something ancient and malevolent. I checked the latest messages. There were more now, dozens, all from the same unknown number, each one saying the same thing in slightly different ways. Join us. You shouldn't have left. We are patient. We are already inside. You brought us home. The last message made my stomach drop. I had brought them here. Whatever force was tied to those mannequins, it wasn't bound to that department store anymore. I'd given it a new stage. My home, and then I heard it scraping. A slow, deliberate drag of something heavy across the floorboards just outside my bedroom door. I approached slowly, placing my ear against the wood. There was breathing on the other side. Shallow. Not human. Just a steady, artificial hiss, like something imitating breath but not understanding it. Then tap, 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 right against the door. I leapt back, heart in my throat, and reached for my phone. No signal, of course. I backed toward the window, weighing the idea of jumping out onto the fire escape, even from this high up. Before I could make a decision, the lights cut out. My room plunged into darkness. Only the faint glow of the phone screen remained, flickering like a candle about to die. I heard the doorknob rattle. Slow, deliberate, creary. The chair, wedged under the knob, groaned as something on the other side pushed harder. I held my breath, raising the bat again. The door began to give, not with brute force, but with persistence. They were waiting me out. Then everything went quiet. I dared to step closer, bat trembling in my hand, and reached out to pull the door open, a sliver just enough to peek through. What I saw froze me in place. 5 mannequins, standing motionless in the hallway, arranged in a perfect semicircle facing the door, all with their arms raised and fingers pointed forward. Toward me. Their heads were tilted, just slightly, like they were listening for something. I slammed the door shut again and stumbled backward. I hit the wall, breathing hard, trying to fight off the rising panic. I couldn't stay here. I had to get out now. I yanked open my closet and found the old flashlight I kept from my college camping days. Miraculously, the battery still worked. Its beam was weak, but enough. I crept to the window, pulled it open, and climbed out onto the fire escape. The cold wind bit at my skin, but I welcomed it. It was real, grounding. Below me, the alley was empty. I descended the creaking metal stairs, causing only once to glance up at my bedroom window. They were watching. 3 mannequins stood pressed against the glass from the inside, faces blank, hands flat against the window. Their hollow eyes followed me as I climbed down. I ran. No plan, no destination. Just away. Away from my apartment, away from the tapping, the messages, the frozen stairs. I didn't stop until I reached the all-night diner near the edge of town. It was lit up, filled with the warmth of human voices and smells of greasy food. A sanctuary. I took a seat at the counter, trying to steady my breathing. The waitress gave me a concerned look, asked if I was okay. I just nodded, unable to form the words. My phone buzzed. One new message. Unknown number. You can't run forever. See you soon. I stared out the diner window. Across the street just beyond. The street lamp's glow stood a mannequin, still as stone, waiting. I stared through the diner's window, my coffee growing cold in my trembling hands. Across the street, the mannequin hadn't moved. But I knew better than to trust stillness. They never moved when I was watching. It was their game pretending to be lifeless until you blinked, turned your head, or let your guard down for even a second. That's when they got closer. The waitress tried to make small talk. I mumbled something about being tired and overworked, but I didn't think she believed it. I couldn't tell her the truth. Who would believe me? That the department store? Mannequins had followed me home. That they were watching, waiting, tapping, whispering. That I couldn't go home without risking seeing one standing in my hallway again. Or worse, waking up to one sitting at the edge of my bed. The mannequin outside hadn't moved an inch, but I felt its eyes on me. I looked away for only a moment to pay my bill, and when I looked back, it was gone. I didn't go outside. Not yet. I waited another 15 minutes watching through the window, waiting for anything to move. But the streets were silent, empty, soaked in yellow street lamp light. Eventually, I had no choice. I stepped out into the cold air, clutching my phone, my legs stiff and slow. The alley behind the diner led toward a motel I remembered staying in once during a road trip. I needed somewhere public, somewhere I could lock the door and hide until morning. A place where the walls weren't already haunted by plastic footsteps and faint whispers in the dark. As I turned the corner toward the alley, I froze. There, standing directly beneath the flickering backlot light, was the same mannequin, except now it had moved. It wasn't just standing, it was posed. One arm raised, palm open as if to wave. The other pointed at me. Its face, still molded in that blank, sterile expression, was now turned in my direction. I backed away slowly, never breaking eye contact. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I remembered what happened when I turned my back on them. I forced myself to keep walking backward, heart thudding like a jackhammer in my chest. I made it to the main road again, and this time I ran, sprinting until the glowing neon sign of the motel buzzed into view. I slammed the bell at the front desk until a groggy night clerk shuffled in from the back room. I threw cash down and asked for a room, any room, and didn't care about the cost or how strange I must have looked. Inside the room, I locked the door, pulled the curtains tight, and pushed the dresser in front of the window for good measure. I collapsed onto the bed, heart still racing, but the silence helped a little. No tapping, no whispers, just the low hum of the heater and the distant sound of a highway far off. I tried not to look at my phone. I didn't want to see another message, but I did. Unknown number. You can sleep. We'll keep watch. It made my skin crawl. I threw the phone across the room and it hit the wall with a crack, landing face down on the carpet. But the message stayed burned into my thoughts. They weren't chasing me, not like a normal threat would. No, they were hurting me, guiding me like cattle toward a specific destination. Every message, every appearance, every whisper, it was all part of something bigger. They wanted something or someone. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that plastic smile, that blank, vacant stare. Around 4:30 a.m., I started to drift off against my will, and that's when the knocking began. Not on the door, but from inside the room. 3 short knocks, like fingernails tapping wood. I sat bolt upright. My phone was buzzing again, even from where it lay on the carpet. Buzz, buzz. I picked it up, hands trembling. Unknown number. Check the bathroom. I didn't want to. Every part of me screamed to ignore it. Leave. Get out. But I couldn't. Some twisted curiosity had rooted me to the floor. I crossed the room and pressed my ear against the bathroom door. Silence. No water dripping. No footsteps. Just silence. I opened the door. There was nothing there. Just the mirror, the toilet, the cracked sink basin. But something was wrong. Something was off. The mirror, it was fogged over like someone had been standing there breathing on it. In the middle of the condensation was a message. Welcome back. I backed away from the door, but as I turned, the light in the room flickered once, then shut off completely. Darkness swallowed the space. I couldn't even see my hand in front of my face. That's when I heard the tap, tap, again, closer this time. My phone lit up another message. Unknown number. You left the door open. And as the light from the screen illuminated the room for a brief second, I saw them. 4 mannequins, silhouetted in the corners of the room. Unmoving, but closer than they had ever been. One stood by the window, one near the door, one next to the dresser, and one right at the foot of the bed. I froze. The tapping began again. But now it was everywhere. Against the walls, the floor, the ceiling. They were surrounding me. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Lights don't stop us. And with that, the screen went dark and I was left in complete silence. Just before the bed creaked, and something plastic and cold crawled up beside me. I didn't move. I couldn't. My limbs felt paralyzed as the bed dipped under the weight of something joining me. The air in the motel room had turned sharp and cold, as if it had been drained of oxygen. All I could hear was my own ragged breath, and the subtle creak of synthetic limbs shifting next to me. I turned my head slowly, afraid of what I might see. It was a mannequin, lying beside me, its face inches from mine, its mouth locked in a frozen smile, eyes wide and unblinking. The cold, smooth plastic of its arm draped over my chest, holding me down, not in an embrace, but something worse, a claiming. I screamed and threw myself off the bed, hitting the carpet hard. The thing didn't follow. It just lay there, staring at the ceiling as if waiting. I scrambled for the lamp, yanked the cord, and light flooded the room. The mannequin was gone, no indent in the mattress. No trace of it ever being there. Just a bed, a lamp, a door that was still locked tight from the inside, but I knew I hadn't imagined it. I sat on the floor, gasping, clutching the bat I'd brought from home, trying to remind myself that plastic couldn't move. That this was all impossible. Then my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Don't fight it. It's easier when you stop. I nearly smashed the phone, but stopped myself. I needed it. It was the only connection I had left to whatever this was. Maybe if I understood it, I could break it, escape it. I paced the room for hours, bat in one hand, phone in the other. I tore open the closet, checked under the bed. I couldn't sleep. I wouldn't let them catch me off guard again, but I was slipping. Around 7 a.m., sunlight finally broke through the curtains. A new day. The tapping had stopped. The mannequins hadn't appeared again. Maybe they were tied to the dark. I booked another night at the motel, but didn't stay inside. I couldn't. I needed answers. I drove back to the department store. It was still closed, shuttered. For lease sign now hung over the entrance. The windows were boarded up. But I didn't care. I'd parked in the back lot and walked the perimeter. I had to know what happened there, what I had awakened or walked into. I found the service entrance. Still unlocked, the door creaked open like it was expecting me. I stepped inside. Everything was just as I'd left it that last night. The cleaning supplies still sat in their caddy. My old badge was on the floor by the janitor's closet and the mannequins. Gone. The display floors were empty. No limbs. No faces. No plastic figures standing in wait. But the silence, it wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, dense, like the building itself was holding its breath. I wandered deeper inside, flashlight in hand. When I reached the stockroom, the lights flickered to life without me touching anything. And there they were, all of them, dozens of mannequins lined up in perfect rows, as if they had been stored here posed upright, heads tilted slightly downward, like they were sleeping or praying. And at the center, a large mannequin unlike the rest. Its face had no features. Just a smooth, blank surface. No eyes, no mouth, just a glossy, empty head. It raised its arm, slowly. Not jerky, like before. Not puppet-like deliberate, controlled. I stepped back. My heart thundered in my ears. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You returned. That means you're ready. Then I noticed it on the far wall, a mirror I had never seen before. But it didn't reflect the room accurately. It showed mannequins, yes, but not posed like mine. They were alive in the reflection, twitching, breathing, turning their heads in unison to face me. And in the middle of them, where I should have been, stood a mannequin that looked like me. Same clothes, same height, same face. Its mouth slowly twisted into a smile. I turned from the mirror, but the room was unchanged. My reflection self wasn't there. I backed away, bumping into one of the mannequins. It didn't move, but I could swear I heard breathing. My phone buzzed one final time. Unknown number. You're already becoming one of us. I dropped the phone and ran. I don't remember leaving the building. Don't remember starting the car or driving back to the motel. It's all a blur, but I'm here now. In the mirror of this room, I see something wrong, something off. My skin doesn't look right, too smooth. My movements feel stiff, jerky, like I'm being pulled by strings. I can't see. The tapping has returned, not from the walls, from inside me, like something is knocking from beneath my skin. I tried calling someone, anyone, but my voice is starting to lose emotion. Words feel unnatural now. I find myself holding still for long stretches without realizing it. Today, I blinked and hours passed. The mannequin in the corner of the motel room isn't across the street anymore. It's right here, standing over me, watching. And the final message I got said only, you've joined the floor display. They say a fresh start is supposed to feel freeing. A clean slate, a new chapter. For me, moving into this old apartment on the edge of town was supposed to be exactly that, an escape from the chaos of the last year. The place was nothing special. A second-floor unit in a creaky, pre-war building with water stains on the ceiling and radiators that screamed when they kicked on. But it was quiet, peaceful even, or at least it used to be. The first time I heard the knocking, I thought I was dreaming. It was soft. 3 gentle knocks, just enough to stir me awake. I sat up, blinking into the darkness, my alarm clock reading 3 a.m. on the dot. I listened for a while, thinking maybe I'd imagined it, and eventually chalked it up to the pipes or maybe a neighbor. The next night, it happened again, the exact same time. Three soft knocks, not on the walls, not from upstairs. No, it was my front door. By the fourth night, the knocking had become a routine. I stayed up this time, sitting on the couch, phone in hand, staring at the door like it owed me answers. The building was quiet, eerily so. No TVs on in the neighboring units, no footsteps overhead. Just silence and the soft hum of the fridge behind me. Then, right on cue, knock, knock, knock. I jumped despite myself, my heart thudding as I crept toward the door. I didn't turn on the light, just inched forward and peered through the peephole. He was standing there, a man maybe 6 feet tall, dressed in black from head to toe. His posture was too still, too rigid, like a mannequin propped up for display. But it was his face that froze me in place. He was smiling. Not a polite smile. Not even a creepy one. It was dot, 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 wrong. Stretched too wide, as if the muscles in his cheeks had snapped. His teeth were perfectly aligned, straight as piano keys, and his eyes were locked onto mine like he knew I was watching. He didn't blink, didn't speak, just stood there with that inhuman grin stretched across his face. And then, without warning, he turned and walked away. I backed up from the door slowly, my palms slick with sweat. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat on the couch, watching the door, heart pounding until dawn. The next day, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a neighbor playing a joke. Maybe someone was on something. I even asked the landlord if anyone else had complained about strange visitors in the night. He laughed it off, said the building had always had its whatever that meant. Still, I didn't want to look like a lunatic, so I kept my mouth shut. But that night, I was ready. I stayed awake again, phone charged, 911 on speed dial. I left all the lights off and kept the camera aimed at the door. At exactly 3 a.m., the knocking came. Knock, knock, knock. I tiptoed to the peephole, and he was there again, the same man. Same smile. Only now, he was even closer to the door, close enough that I could make out the slight glisten on his teeth and the shine of his eyes under the hallway bulb. This time, he didn't leave. He just stood there, smiling, for 5 minutes. Straight. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. My phone trembled in my hand as I hit record on the camera, but when I checked the footage afterward, it was just static. 5 straight minutes of grainy, useless static. By the 5th night, I was spiraling. I started sleeping during the day. Staying up through the nights, I installed new locks, barred the windows, and still he came. Every night at the exact same time. Every night, the same knock. Every night, that cursed smile. I stopped opening the peephole. I couldn't look at that face anymore. I started putting a chair under the knob, even though I knew it wouldn't help. Something about the way he stood there. It wasn't normal. It wasn't human. That night, I didn't go to the door. I sat frozen on the floor of my living room, lights off, listening to the knocking. It lasted longer this time. 10 minutes at least. Then ... silence. But my phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. No contact. No name. Just one sentence. I know you're home. My hand tightened around the phone as I read the message again. I know you're home. 5 words. Harmless on their own. But together. They felt like a threat, like he had reached through the screen and touched my spine with his ice-cold fingers. I stared at the door, breath shallow, every instinct screaming at me to run, to hide, to do anything other than sit there like a sitting duck in the dark. But I didn't move. I just listened, waiting for another knock, another whisper, anything. But it was quiet now. The kind of silence that crushes your thoughts. I stayed that way for what felt like an hour, watching the door, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Eventually, the sun began to rise. Pale light crept through the blinds, casting long stripes across the floor. That was the only thing that made me feel safe. Daylight. When the sun was up, the world felt solid again. Real, rational. But the nights ... The nights were his. I barely made it through the day. Every sound made me jump. Every time the floor creaked, I flinched. I tried blocking the number, but it didn't matter. That evening, at exactly 6 p.m., I got another message from a new number this time. we're not finished. That's when I knew it wasn't just one man, or at least it wasn't something that could be stopped by a locked door or changing phone settings. That night, I tried something new. I taped black construction paper over the peephole. I unplugged my phone. I even turned up the TV volume, hoping that white noise would drown out the silence. At 2:59 a.m., I turned the volume off. The silence was deafening. 3 a.m. arrived. Knock, knock, knock. I sat on my couch, teeth clenched, heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. The knocks were slower this time, more deliberate, like he was savoring each one. I didn't dare. Look, I couldn't. Then the doorknob rattled. My body locked up. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. Just stared at the door as the knob turned back and forth, slowly, like he was testing it. The new deadbolt I installed held steady, but that didn't reassure me. If he really wanted to get in, I knew locks wouldn't matter. And then the knocking changed. It wasn't at the door anymore. It was on the window, my apartment's second floor window. 3 slow knocks, right against the glass behind me. I didn't turn around. Couldn't. I stared forward, refusing to move, every muscle tight as piano wire. The knocking came again, this time harder, like something solid was wrapping the glass. Still, I didn't move. Finally, the knock stopped, and I turned. There was nothing there. No shadow, no figure. Just the faint imprint of a hand pressed against the window pane. 5 long, smudged fingers, still lingering in the fog. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I just sat in the middle of the room wrapped in a blanket, eyes darting between the door and the window, waiting. By morning, I made up my mind. I wasn't going to keep living like this. I called my sister, said I was coming to stay for. Well, she didn't ask many questions, just told me to bring whatever I needed, and that I was welcome as long as I wanted. By noon, I had packed a few essentials, grabbed my charger, wallet, and threw my duffel bag into the trunk of my car. As I was about to leave, I turned and looked up at my apartment window from the parking lot. The glass was clean, no handprint. No sign anyone had ever touched it. But just as I turned back to get into my car, my phone vibrated in my pocket. I didn't want to check it. I knew who it was. But I did anyway. The message was short, no number attached. Just black text on a white screen. Leaving won't help. I'll be there at 3. I nearly dropped the phone. I wanted to scream, but there were people around, neighbors, a man walking his dog, a woman carrying groceries. None of them looked concerned. None of them knew what I was running from. I slammed the door shut, started the car, and peeled out of that parking lot like it was on fire. My sister's house was about an hour away, a modest 2-story on a quiet cul-de-sac. She greeted me with a warm hug, instantly seeing the exhaustion on my face. I told her bits and pieces, just enough for her to know I wasn't just being dramatic. She listened, didn't question it, didn't laugh, just said, "You're safe now." I wanted to believe that. That night, she gave me the guest room, a cup of tea, and one of those weighted blankets she swore by. I checked every door and window twice, made sure the house was locked up like a fortress. I felt safer than I had in days, and still, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the alarm clock on the nightstand, the digital numbers glowing like a countdown in the dark. 2:58, 2:59, 3 a.m. silence. I let out a long breath, smiling for the first time in days. No knocks, no messages. Maybe I was safe after. All been from somewhere deep in the walls. I heard it. 3 soft knocks. Not at the door. Not at the window, but from inside the room. 3 knocks. Soft. Slow. Measured. But they weren't at the door this time. They were inside the room. Inside the walls. I shot up in bed, my heart thudding in my chest so loud I could barely hear. The air felt wrong, too heavy, too still. I fumbled in the dark, knocking over the glass of water on the nightstand as I reached for my phone. My hand shook as I lit up the screen. No messages, but I didn't need one to know. He was here. I held my breath, ears straining for another sound. The guest room was dim, only a sliver of moonlight slipping in through the curtains. The walls stood silent, unmoving, as if nothing had happened. I told myself I imagined it. That my mind was. Still wired to fear the stroke of 3 a.m., then I heard it again, this time right beneath the bed. 3 soft knocks, as if someone was lying under me, wrapping their fingers on the wooden frame. I bolted upright, the blankets tangled around my legs. My instinct screamed at me to run, but I was frozen paralyzed by the knowledge that if I looked down, I might see something staring back. Slowly, carefully, I reached over and flicked on the bedside lamp. The light came on, and just like that, the knocking stopped. I waited. 10 seconds. 20. A full minute. Nothing. Still, I couldn't bring myself to look under the bed. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat upright, lamp on, blanket wrapped tight around me like a shield. By the time the sun rose, I felt like I hadn't blinked once. When my sister knocked on the door to check on me, I jumped like I'd been shot. She asked if I was okay. I lied and told her I was fine. I didn't want her to think I was losing my mind. But I was starting to think maybe I was. That afternoon, I drove into town to clear my head. I found a quiet coffee shop, sat by the window, and just tried to exist. For a moment, it almost felt normal. People moved outside, traffic passed, sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees lining the street. Then I checked my phone. A message. Unknown number. Don't think distance can save you? I stared at the words, my stomach twisting. My thumb hovered over the delete button, but I couldn't do it. I needed to keep them. Proof I wasn't imagining this. Another message came through seconds later. 3 a.m. tonight. I'll be closer. I nearly dropped the phone. I left the coffee shop immediately, my nerves fraying by the second. I drove in silence, gripping the wheel like a lifeline, scanning every car, every shadow, but no one followed. That night, I debated whether to tell my sister. But what could I even say? That a man who grins too wide and doesn't knock like a human being was following me from apartment to apartment. Creeping through walls, I kept it to myself, but I prepared. I barricaded the door with a chair, slept with a flashlight and a hammer by the bed. And most importantly, I didn't close my eyes. At 2:57 a.m., I felt the temperature drop. The air turned still, and right on cue 3 a.m., the knocking came again. This time, from inside the closet. 3 perfect knocks. I stood slowly, hammer clenched in one hand, flashlight in the other. I approached the closet door. It was just a plain wooden thing, the kind you see in every guest bedroom. Nothing special. But that night, it felt like a gate to somewhere much worse. I flicked on the flashlight and reached for the knob. It turned dizzily. Inside ... nothing. No man. No shadow. Just clothes, a suitcase, an extra pillow. I stepped back, confused. And then I heard it, behind you. A whisper. So close it felt. Like it had been breathed into my ear. I spun around. No one. Just the quiet hum of the bedside lamp. But something changed in that moment. I realized he didn't need a door anymore. I had already opened one for him the first time I let fear in. He was a crack in the world now. Slipping through shadows, through silence, he fed off it. So that night, I tried something different. I faced him. I sat in the center of the room, eyes open, lights on, music playing, phone recording. I refused to be afraid. I stared at the closet door. The walls, the window. I even laughed. Loudly, I told him out loud he couldn't scare me anymore. And you know what? There were no knocks, no whispers, no messages. Just quiet, real quiet. Not the kind that makes your skin crawl, but the peaceful kind, like a storm passing. I stayed up until dawn. No movement, no shadows. My phone stayed silent. By morning, I finally felt like I had taken something back. Control. He hadn't disappeared completely, I could feel it. But he had retreated like a snake coiled in the corner, watching, waiting. But he didn't own me anymore. And for the first time in over a week, I slept. A full, dreamless sleep. The next few days passed without incident. No knocks. No whispers. no messages. And for a while, I started to believe I'd won. The man, the smiling stranger, had fed off fear. That much I was sure of now. He'd crept in through cracks of doubt, burrowed into moments of panic, and thrived on being seen, but never acknowledged. But when I looked him in the eye, when I named him and rejected the fear, he backed off. I started reclaiming parts of my life, little things, eating real food again, watching movies at night instead of staring at the door. I even went on a walk around the block without checking over my shoulder every few steps. It was quiet. It was normal. But then came the seventh night, and something changed. It was around 2:40 a.m. I had just finished brushing my teeth, getting ready for another sleepless watch, just in case kind of night. When the lights in the bathroom flickered, not like a bulb dying, but a pulse. A blink. I froze, toothbrush still in hand, and then it started again. Knock, knock, knock. 3 taps, soft, deliberate, coming from inside the mirror. The sound reverberated through the glass like it was hollow. I stared into my own reflection, nothing out of the ordinary. Just me, pale and wide-eyed, frozen in a bathrobe with toothpaste dripping from my chin. But behind me in the reflection, he was standing there, smiling, no footsteps, no arrival, just suddenly there, close enough to touch me. I spun around, nothing, just the bathroom door, closed, quiet. I looked back at the mirror. He was gone. But something about the reflection lingered warped, as if the glass was still holding on to him. I dropped the toothbrush, heart thudding in my chest. This wasn't over. He was just looking for another way in. I didn't scream. I didn't panic. I walked calmly back into the guest room and sat on the bed. He wanted me to break. But I wasn't going to give him that. I opened the window, let the cold night air sweep in, and grabbed the old iron crucifix my grandmother had given me years ago. I wasn't even religious, but something in me felt like I needed something ancient, something that came from faith, even if I didn't fully believe it. I held it close, and I waited. 2:57 a.m. The wind picked up. The window blinds began swaying, gently. The air in the room turned icy, and a pressure started building in my chest, like I was deep underwater. And then 3 a.m. struck. The lights in the room went out. Pitch black. For a moment, all I could hear was my heartbeat. Then the knocking came, not from the walls, not from the door, not from the mirror, but from everywhere. 100 knocks. Surrounding me, like the whole room was alive with fingers drumming against every surface. I didn't move. I whispered aloud, "I know what you are, and I'm not afraid." And just like that, silence. Total, absolute silence. Then a voice. Whispering through the dark, his voice. "You don't belong to me." I stood. "No," I said firmly. "You don't get to live here." Not anymore. The air snapped. A crack like thunder erupted through the room, and in the center of the floor I saw him. The smiling man? His grin, impossibly wide. His eyes, glowing faintly green. But he looked different now, weaker. Like something old pretending to still be dangerous. "You opened the door?" he hissed, his voice warbling. "You let me in." "I didn't invite you," I said, stepping forward, holding up the crucifix. "You forced your way in." He recoiled, just slightly. "You thrive in fear?" I said, "But I'm done feeding you." He lunged, but I didn't flinch, and that's when he shattered. His body, his shape crumbled like glass, breaking into 1,000 shards of black smoke and fading into nothingness. The lights came back on. The room was still, warm, peaceful. That was the last time I saw him. It's been 6 weeks since that night. No knocks, no messages, no whispers, nothing. I stayed at my sister's place for a while longer, but eventually I felt strong enough to go back home. My apartment is just how I left it. Clean. Normal. I replaced the locks. Painted the door a different color. Burned sage in every room. Not because I thought it would trap or banish him, but because it made me feel like I was in control again. Sometimes I still wake up at 2:59 a.m., instinctively bracing for that knock. but it never comes. Because I never opened the door. Not really. And that was what saved me. He may still be out there waiting for someone else to look through the peephole. Someone curious. Someone afraid. But it won't be me. Not ever again. When I first moved into that apartment, I thought I'd finally caught a break. It was on the edge of town, tucked away between a boarded up dry cleaner and an abandoned diner. The outside looked like it hadn't seen maintenance in a decade flaking. Paint, dents curling up the brick, and windows so dusty they blurred the world outside. But the rent was cheap, and after months of couch surfing and praying for steady work, I couldn't afford to be picky. Mr. Grayson, the landlord, seemed decent enough. A wiry man with blotchy skin and watery eyes, always dressed in the same drab sweater and tan slacks. He showed me the unit himself, room 6A on the second floor. Said it was one of the quiet ones. Smiled too long when I told him I'd be living alone. I didn't think much of it at the time. I was too focused on the idea of having space to myself. A bed, a small kitchen, a hot shower, privacy. It was all I needed. The first few nights were uneventful. The place was drafty, and the plumbing groaned whenever I turned on the faucet, but it was mine. I could finally breathe. I spent the first week unpacking, rearranging furniture, and trying to ignore the odd creaks and bangs from the building, settling around me. Typical for an old place like this. But on the 8th night, I heard something different. I was lying in bed around 2:30 a.m., half asleep, when I heard a faint scratching. Not from outside, but from inside the wall. It was slow, repetitive, like fingernails dragging across drywall. I sat up, heart thumping, listening. It lasted maybe 30 seconds. Then nothing. I told myself it was rats or maybe old pipes contracting. In the cold, the next night, it came again. Only this time, it wasn't scratching. It was tapping. 3 distinct tap, pause, then 3 more, as if someone on the other side was knocking. In a rhythm, I didn't sleep after that. The next day, I went to talk to Mr. Grayson. He opened the door almost immediately, as if he'd been waiting on the other side. When I asked him about noises in the wall, his expression didn't change. No confusion, no concern. Just that same pale, neutral stare. Probably just rats, he said flatly. Old building, like this gets M sometimes. I nodded, though something in his tone made my skin crawl. That night, I pushed my bed against the far wall, away from where the tapping had come from. I kept the lights on and the TV playing soft static, hoping the white noise would drown it out. It didn't. Around 3 a.m., the tapping returned. Louder now, more aggressive. And this time, I thought I heard something else, a whisper. A low, breathy sound barely audible over the hum of the TV. I muted it and held my breath. It said my name. I told myself I imagined it. I had to have imagined it. But when I turned the TV back on, I noticed something strange. My bed, the one I'd moved earlier that day, was back in its original position. Right against the wall. I hadn't moved it. My heart hammered in my chest. I got up, turned on every light in the apartment, and searched the entire unit. Windows locked, door bolted, no sign of forced entry. Still, something was wrong. The following afternoon, I decided to move the bed again. As I was shoving it across the room, I noticed something on the wall where the headboard had been. A hole, small, perfectly round, maybe the size of a marble drilled right into the plaster, at eye level when you're lying down. I bent closer, peering into the darkness. Couldn't see anything at first. Then, for just a second, I thought I saw movement, a flicker, like something shifted on the other side. I jumped back, heart racing. The hole was new, or at least it hadn't been obvious before. But it was intentional, and it was positioned to watch me while I slept. I slapped a piece of duct tape over it and pushed the bed across the room for good. My hands were shaking. This wasn't rats. It wasn't the building settling. Someone had been watching me. That night, I barely slept. I lay curled up on the couch, clutching a flashlight and a kitchen knife. My phone buzzed around 2:50 a.m. Unknown number. One message. Why did you cover the hole? I stared at the screen, bile rising in my throat. My hands trembled as I tapped out a reply. Who is this? No answer. A minute later, the tapping started again. Louder than ever, furious, urgent. It came from every wall at once. I backed into the kitchen, breathing hard, trying to make sense of what was happening. Then the message tone chimed again. Another text. I can still see you. The lights flickered and went out. The apartment was completely dark. I stood in the kitchen, back pressed against the fridge, my phone trembling in my grip. That last message looped in my mind. I can still see you. My stomach twisted. I hadn't given my number to anyone since I moved in. I hadn't even posted it anywhere online. Whoever was texting me knew exactly where I was, and that meant they were close. I shone the phone's flashlight toward the living room. The beam shook, bouncing across furniture, casting warped shadows against the walls. The tapping had stopped, but the silence that followed was worse, dense, watchful, like something holding its breath. I crept forward slowly. My foot brushed something. I looked down. The duct tape I had used to cover the hole was lying on the floor. No, I pressed that down tight. It couldn't have just peeled off. Someone had removed it. Or something. My flashlight stuttered for a moment, just long enough for the darkness to feel like it swallowed the entire room. And when the beam returned, the hole in the wall was no longer empty. There was an eye behind it. A wide bloodshot eye, perfectly still, staring straight at me through the hole, not blinking, not twitching, just watching. I dropped my phone in shock. The light tumbled across the room, casting long, twitching shadows before landing on its back and shooting a useless beam into the ceiling. I scrambled to grab it, hand shaking as I aimed it back at the wall, but the eye was gone. Just the black hole again. Open, waiting. My phone buzzed in my hand. A new message. You shouldn't have looked back. Something banged behind me. I spun, light swinging wildly. The kitchen cabinet door was wide open. I hadn't touched it. I never used the bottom cabinet. I stared into the dark space under. The sink, more tapping. But now it wasn't coming from the walls. It was coming from beneath the floorboards. I dropped to my knees, pressing my ear against the tile. I could hear whispering, not words. Just murmurs, dozens of voices, overlapping like static rising and falling in tone, like they were arguing just under the surface. Then, clear as day, one of them hissed my name, Alex. I bolted upright and back toward the front door. I had to leave. Screw the rent. Screw the deposit. I didn't care. I unlocked the deadbolt, threw open the door, and froze. Mr. Grayson was standing in the hallway, as if he'd been waiting. His clothes were the same as always, the same stained sweater, same tan slacks. But there was something off about him, his smile too wide, his eyes too alert. He held a thermos in one hand and greeted me like nothing was wrong. Everything okay in there, Alex? He asked, like he didn't already know. I couldn't even form words. I just stared, heart thudding like a jackhammer in my chest. You look pale, he continued. Maybe you should come down to the basement. It's cooler down there. We can talk. I shook my head. No, I just need to get some air. His smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed just slightly. You really shouldn't go outside, he said softly. It's not safe. Not when they're watching. I slammed the door in his face, and immediately regretted it. From the hallway I heard him laugh, not a normal laugh. Something low and gurgling like it scraped out of the back of his throat, then silence. I locked every bolt I had him back. Away. My phone buzzed again. Now you've made him angry. I turned slowly and saw something that turned my blood to ice. A crack had appeared in the wall by the bedroom door, small. Hairline, but it was moving, widening, as if something on the other side was pushing through. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the hammer, and approached the wall cautiously. The plaster around the crack was pulsing, breathing in and out like lungs. Like it was alive, and then something poked through. A single pale finger, thin, almost skeletal. It pushed against the crack, bending in ways fingers shouldn't bend. I dropped the hammer and staggered back. My phone rang. The screen said, "Unknown." I didn't want to answer, but I couldn't stop my thumb from swiping. I pressed the phone to my ear. Static. Then, underneath the static, a whisper. "Don't run, Alex. You live here now." "We all live here." I threw the phone across the room. The plaster wall burst open like paper. Something spilled out of the wall writhing. Limbs, hands with too many fingers, faces pressed and stretched like wax figures trying to scream. They didn't crawl. They flowed across the floor like liquid flesh, reaching for me, whispering, giggling, watching. I grabbed my keys and made a break for the door. It was still locked, but the chain snapped under the weight of my shoulder as I slammed into it. I tumbled into the hallway and sprinted down the stairs, ignoring Mr. Grayson's voice calling after me from the dark. "Running won't help you now. Alex ... You let them see you." I didn't stop. I ran barefoot into the cold street, panting, wild-eyed, and didn't look back. Not until the police arrived. The police didn't believe me. They showed up after what felt like hours, though I'm sure it was only 20 minutes, and found me barefoot, shivering and rambling on the sidewalk outside the building. I tried to explain. About the eye in the wall, the messages, the thing that burst through the plaster. But as soon as I mentioned Mr. Grayson, something changed. The officer, middle-aged, mustache, thick coat, exchanged a glance with his partner. A subtle shift. A flash of discomfort. "We've had complaints about the landlord before," he said. "But nothing ... like what you're describing." "I'm not crazy," I snapped. I didn't imagine that. I saw something in my wall. It was alive. They told me to sit in the back of the cruiser while they checked out the apartment. I didn't argue. I just wanted someone else to go in. Someone with a gun. Someone not me. They were gone maybe 10 minutes. When they came back out, their faces were blank. "We didn't find anything," one said. "No hole in the wall. Number? Signs of forced entry. Just a mess. You sure you weren't having an episode?" "I know what I saw." He sighed, clicked his pen closed. "Look, I'm not saying you're lying. But if there's nothing back there, there's not much we can do." I begged them to search the basement. Mr. Grayson had mentioned it. "It's cooler down there. We can talk." I hadn't thought much of it then, but now it sounded like a threat in disguise. They refused, said the basement was locked. Said there was nothing suspicious on file about Grayson. Then they left, and I was alone again. I should have walked away, but something pulled me back. A sick part of my brain needed answers, needed proof. I couldn't keep wondering what I saw or what I let out, so I waited until just after midnight. Then, using the emergency stairwell at the side of the building, I snuck back in through the laundry room door. The lights were dim. The hallways even quieter than usual. The entire building felt like it had stopped breathing. I crept down the main corridor, past my apartment, past the flickering light above 3B, and finally reached the heavy metal door to the basement. Locked, but lock was old, rusted, and I'd brought a screwdriver from the maintenance shed. It took 5 minutes of sweating and prying before the latch finally snapped loose with a painful metallic shriek. The air that poured out from the basement was wrong, not just cold stale. Like something had been sealed up for years. I turned on my phone's flashlight and descended into the darkness. The stairs creaked with every step. At the bottom, I found a long hallway, lined with storage cages and breaker panels. Water dripped from the ceiling. But there was something else. A noise, faint, repetitive. Tap, tap, tap. I followed it. Halfway down the corridor, the sound stopped in front of a small wooden door set into the wall. It didn't match the rest of the concrete and metal. I hesitated, hand on the knob. Then I opened it. The space inside was tiny, barely a crawl space. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in my flashlight's beam. Old insulation, mold, cobwebs, and something else. Torn clothing, A mattress, half rotted, and holes. Tiny, perfectly round holes drilled through the drywall, facing directly toward the apartments above. I counted 7, each lined up with where a tenant's bedroom might be. This wasn't just happening to me. Mr. Grayson had been watching. Everyone. There was something scrawled in chalk on the wall near the mattress. I leaned closer. They live inside the walls. He feeds them us? I recoiled. The handwriting was frantic, scratched over and over like someone was trying to make sure it couldn't be ignored. I turned to leave, and my flashlight died. Total darkness swallowed me. I fumbled for the phone, shaking it, pressing the power button, praying the battery wasn't dead. And then, from behind me, just inches away, breathing, I spun around, but I couldn't see anything. Then, the soft crunch of a footstep behind me, then another. I turned and ran. Slamming the crawl space door behind me, I sprinted through the basement corridor, heart hammering in my ears. The shadows seemed to stretch along the walls, arms reaching, whispering things I didn't want to understand. I didn't stop until I burst into the lobby. And there he was, Mr. Grayson, standing behind the front desk, smiling, but this time his face was different. Wrong. His skin was sagging, like it wasn't his, like it was draped over something else. You shouldn't have gone down there, he said, voice wet and trembling. Now they know your name. I backed away slowly, hand clutching the phone. I'm calling the cops, he laughed, not amused, delighted. The cops already know. They've always known. Who do you think keeps them quiet? I ran again, out the front door, across the street, not stopping until I reached the gas station at the corner. I called 911. This time I didn't tell them about holes in walls or glowing eyes. I just said my landlord had threatened me and I was afraid for my life. They promised to send someone, but I already knew it wouldn't matter. The damage had been done. Something was awake now. Something that had been behind those walls for a long, long time. And it knew me. I didn't sleep. I sat in the harsh fluorescent lights of the gas station all night, jittery and cold, nursing a lukewarm cup of burnt coffee while trying to keep my back against the wall and my eyes on every corner. When the police finally arrived, I recognized one of the officers. It was the same one from before, the mustache guy. His expression soured the moment he saw me. I thought we told you there was nothing back there, he said. There is. I found it, the crawl space, the holes, even some kind of nest. Mr. Grayson's been watching everyone. He said they live inside the walls. He raised an eyebrow. They? I realized how I sounded. Deranged, sleep-deprived, wild-eyed, and I didn't care. I didn't care. I told them everything. This time, I left nothing out. I even told them about the writing on the walls and the figure I saw in the basement. I showed them the text from the unknown number, except they were gone. All of them. My phone, which I hadn't powered off, now showed a blank message history, not a single notification. The officer scrolled through my call log and text messages, then handed it back like it was a kid's toy. You really should talk to someone, he said. There's a mental health clinic just a few blocks down. That was it. They didn't go back to the building. They didn't question Grayson. They just left. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went back. I had nowhere else to go. No money for a hotel. No friends in town. My stomach churned as I approached. The apartment building, the structure looming like a monolith of secrets. The windows stared down like blank eyes. I expected to see Grayson at the front desk again, smiling like before, but the lobby was empty. For a while, I just stood there, listening. Nothing. No voices. No tapping. I was beginning to wonder if maybe I had snapped, if I really was losing my mind when I saw something that stopped me cold. The floor near the elevator was wet. A small trail of moisture led from the elevator door to the maintenance closet. Curious and cautious, I followed it. The closet door was unlocked. Inside, amongst buckets and mops, was a pile of old papers water-stained. Torn, but still legible. Blueprints. I pulled them out and laid them on the ground. They were plans for the building. Dated decades ago. And On one of them, crudely drawn in red marker, was something that wasn't part of any ordinary design. A hidden corridor. It snaked behind the walls of every apartment unit, not just the basement, every floor. The corridor connected to what was labeled as observation access points. I matched the locations to where I'd seen holes. That was when it hit me. Grayson hadn't watched me from behind the wall. He'd moved through them. He was inside them. I shoved the blueprints into my bag and bolted for the stairs. I didn't care how exhausted I was. I had to find proof. Something I could show someone. Anyone. I climbed to the third floor toward the apartment above mine. It had been empty since I moved in. The door was slightly ajar, as if someone had forgotten to close it. My hand shook as I pushed it open. Inside, it was silent. Furniture covered in white sheets. Dust clinging to the air. But there was something odd about the layout, like it was a mirror version of my own apartment. Only off. I walked into the bedroom. The wall across from the bed had been torn open. A gaping hole led into pitch-black darkness. I raised my phone's flashlight and stepped closer. A corridor, just like the blueprints. It was narrow, barely wide enough for a person to fit, and lined with aged wooden panels covered in faded chalk markings. Dates, names, arrows pointing in different directions. Then I saw the writing again. He feeds them. He watches. He records. Underneath, a rough drawing, a stick figure inside a square box, dozens of eye-like symbols staring in from all sides. I moved deeper. The passage curved and sloped downward. My phone signal died. Dust scraped at my throat. Somewhere far behind me, I thought I heard a whisper too faint to understand. I passed multiple holes in the wall. Each revealed glimpses into other apartments, bedrooms, bathrooms. It was like being behind the set of a theater, peeking in at lives that never knew they were being watched. But then I came to a larger chamber, a room carved into the center of the building, hidden behind every tenant's apartment. And inside that room were cameras, dozens of them, each pointed at a monitor. Each monitor showing a different apartment. Mine was on, the top row dark and quiet, but suddenly the screen flickered, and I saw myself standing there, looking at the camera feed. My heart stopped. That meant I was being watched right now. Not through a wall, not through a peephole, but from somewhere inside this room. I turned slowly. In the corner, half concealed. By the darkness, something moved. A shape. It stepped forward. Thin, pale, wearing Mr. Grayson's face, but wrong. Stretched too tight, like a mask over something else. His mouth twitched. "You weren't supposed to come here," he said. "This was never for you." I backed away, tripping over wires. The air grew heavy. The temperature dropped. "You're going to ruin everything," he whispered. "They'll wake up now. They don't like being seen." From the walls, I heard it tapping from every direction. From inside the foundation, from the shadows. "Do you hear them?" He said, "They're hungry." I turned and ran. I didn't look back. My feet pounded the warped wooden floor of the hidden corridor, each step echoing with a dreadful rhythm that matched the frenzied tapping erupting from the walls. The sound was everywhere now, like dozens of fingers clawing to get out or in. I couldn't tell anymore. My flashlight wobbled in my trembling grip, casting wild, erratic shadows on the walls. Behind me, I could hear him, Grayson, or the thing wearing his face moving quickly, but quietly, like a spider skittering across its web. Every now and then I heard him speak in that dry, flaking voice. "You found them," he whispered, amused. "They'll be so happy." I burst out of the passageway into the empty apartment. My shoulder clipped the doorway, and I nearly fell. But I didn't stop. I raced down the hall, into the stairwell, and down 2 flights before I slammed into the door to my own apartment. My keys slipped from my sweat-slick fingers twice before I finally got the door open. Inside, everything looked unchanged. Too unchanged, as if it had been frozen in time. The light was still on. The chair I had knocked over the night before was now standing upright. I knew I hadn't done that. I slammed the door behind me, locked it, and shoved the dresser in front again, doubling over to catch my breath. I felt like vomiting. I couldn't think clearly. Everything was spinning, thudding with adrenaline and disbelief. But as I tried to steady myself, I realized something was wrong. The tapping had stopped. The silence felt wrong. Too still, as if the entire building was holding its breath. I crept toward my bedroom, half expecting Grayson's pale face to be waiting for me in the shadows. Instead, I saw something worse. The hole in the wall, the one I had patched up days ago, was open again. Wider now, like it had been picked at from the inside. I took a slow step closer and shone my light through it. I expected to see an empty crawl space. Instead, I saw an eye staring back. Bloodshot, unblinking. It blinked once. I fell backward. In horror scrambling on the floor, the eye retreated. The tapping resumed soft now, thoughtful, almost playful. My phone buzzed. I didn't want to look. But I did. Unknown number. You belong to the walls now. I screamed and threw the phone across the room. It shattered against the floor, the screen flickering once before dying. My panic boiled over. I couldn't stay here another second. I grabbed my bag, wrenching it open, searching for the blueprints I had taken. They were still there, crumpled, but intact. If I could find the way back to the lobby, maybe even the circuit breaker room, I could cut power to the entire building. Maybe destroy whatever nest or control hub they were using. I grabbed the hammer again and yanked the dresser away from the door. I stepped out into the hallway and froze. The lights were out. The entire hallway was dark, except for the faint red glow of the exit sign down the hall. But what terrified me more was the sound. It wasn't a tapping anymore. It was dot, dot, dot breathing, not human breathing. No rhythm, no warmth. Just a dry, rasping inhale that sounded like something dragging itself across broken glass. And it was coming from all directions. I turned and ran again toward the stairwell. The red exit sign flickered as I neared it, casting long, twitching shadows across the hallway. I was halfway down the stairs when I felt it. A hand, fingers cold and dry, brushed the back of my neck. I screamed and twisted, but no one was there. Just that impossible, suffocating darkness, thick with mold and whispers. I made it to the bottom floor and burst through the maintenance door. The air was hotter here, damp with rot. Pipes groaned above me, and the floor was slick with black water. I followed the wall, flashlight dimming, until I found the breaker. Box. I flung it open and stared at the rows of switches. I didn't think I just pulled them all, one by one. With each switch, the hum of electricity faded until the building felt dot, 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 hollow, dead. But then something shifted. Not behind me, beneath me. The floor pulsed. The wall next to me groaned like it was breathing. And then I heard the voice again. You think turning off the lights hides you? Grayson whispered, you still live inside us. I turned and ran straight into the boiler room. It was worse than I imagined. Dozens of screens. Old VHS tapes stacked on shelves. Cameras, some active, some static-filled, watching every tenant's apartment. Wires hung from the ceiling like vines. But the thing that made me want to run, and never stop, in the center of the room was a hole in the ground, a shaft descending into complete blackness. From inside it came the tapping, and something else, something alive. I leaned over the edge. It smelled like rust and meat and mildew. And then just before I stepped back, I saw movement. Dozens of eyes, blinking, watching, smiling. I staggered back from the hole, heart pounding, the image of those blinking eyes seared into my memory. They weren't just watching. They were waiting for me to fall in, waiting for me to join them. But I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction. My flashlight was nearly dead, flickering with every step I took as I backed away from the pit. The room hummed softly now, no more whispers, no more tapping. Just that low, mechanical buzz from the monitors behind me, still capturing every angle of the building. One of them showed my own apartment, empty, but on the screen, I saw a movement in the corner. A hand slowly reaching from inside the wall, sliding out like smoke, stretching toward the camera before retreating just as the image glitched. Enough. I grabbed a metal pipe from beside the boiler and swung it through the row of monitors. Sparks flying as the screen shattered, one by one. It felt good, like cutting off their eyes, their reach. But I knew it wasn't enough. I had to destroy this place. My eyes darted to the boiler. Old, industrial, the kind with a massive gas line feeding into it, and right next to it, a rusted emergency shut-off valve, and a hammer-sized wrench mounted to the wall beside it. A plan formed quickly, desperate and dangerous. I turned the gas line all the way open and dropped the flashlight into the darkness of the shaft. It blinked once as it fell, then vanished. Into the deep. Then I took the wrench and jammed it beneath the valve to keep the gas flowing. I ran up the stairs, through the maze of maintenance hallways, my lungs burning with every breath. My apartment door flew open at my touch. I didn't even stop to grab my bag. I just sprinted down the hall and out through the emergency stairwell, every fiber of my body screaming at me to move faster. I hit the alley behind the building just as the explosion rocked the earth. The blast was muffled, like a deep exhale from something ancient. Then fire surged from the basement windows, black smoke rising in thick clouds. I stumbled back, shielding my face, coughing from the fumes. People emerged from neighboring buildings, shouting, calling 911. Sirens screamed in the distance. I collapsed onto the pavement, dazed, covered in soot but alive, and then I felt it. The silence. The watching was gone. The presence that had followed me, breathed down my neck, whispered through the walls, ... had vanished. The fire destroyed most of the building. The basement was gutted. Firefighters said something ruptured near the boiler. Some gas leak that must have gone undetected for years. They couldn't explain the layout of the crawl spaces or the extensive camera system hidden in the walls. When I told the police about Mr. Grayson, they looked confused. There's no record of a Mr. Grayson owning that building, one officer told me. In fact, according to the city, the property's been unoccupied for months. Foreclosed. No tenants on file. No landlord. That made no sense. I had signed a lease. Paid rent. Spoken to him every week, or ... I thought I had. They let me go after taking a statement, but the officer's words stuck with me. If Grayson never existed, if no one else lived in that building, then who built those holes in the walls? Who installed the cameras? And who were the eyes in the dark? It's been 3 months. I live across the country now, in a bright little apartment with new locks, thick walls, and no crawl spaces. I've changed my number, left no forwarding address, and sleep with a nightlight on. No shame. And I'm okay. I really am. I don't hear tapping. I don't smell rot. The walls are quiet, still, but sometimes when I lie awake in bed, I swear I feel something. A tension in the air. Like the moment before a storm breaks. I tell myself it's just trauma. Just memory, but I check my walls every week. I knock on them, I listen, and this morning I found something. A small hole, no bigger than a dime, just behind my bed frame. It wasn't there before. I haven't looked through it yet, because I'm not sure I want to know what's on the other side. But one thing's certain. If I hear tapping again, I won't wait around to listen.